Hello there, and welcome to this discussion. We're just going to have a discussion about 9/11 conspiracies and why, I've looked up, and I'm doing a GDK. Thank you. Turn myself off. So we're going to be having a discussion about 9/11 conspiracy theories. Personally, I've looked into many of these and I find them rather vacuous. And a lot of the time, it's not that people are stupid, it's just that they don't know things. One of the things on the list that I put out there was video cameras. And for example, you see bits, where you see the planes turning, you see a wing disappear, in one frame or another. Things like that. This is how video cameras work. The plane couldn't see the contrast between the sky and the wing, and so it didn't put it in. And then on the next frame, it's there. And, normally the human eye can't see 30 frames per second or 15 frames per second, which was the common type of camera back then. So as a result, if you look at it across X of frames per second, it looks fine. It's only if you're anal enough to look at every single one, it disappears. Things like that. That's the kind of way that we're going to go with this. If you want to join, you'd be welcome. Put a message in the side chat. I'm trying. I don't want it to get the hangout to get sniped or anything, so I'll hopefully be able to get the message out to you, and we'll see what happens. But so for now, we got Midnight sort of here at the moment, isn't responding. We've got Sean G and we've got Tom Stano. So how are you doing tonight?
Okay.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So I haven't really got a plan other than we'll just talk and see what comes out.
Sounds good.
So some of the issues that I've seen, what are the main ones that I see? So I'm talking to an audience rather than Sean right now, because Sean is the 9/11 truther, as it were, right now. But I'm trying to talk to an entire audience, not just deal with one person's one, because there are so many of these little ideas that people have, and sometimes they defy reality. One of the arguments is, oh, there weren't any planes, they were, dubbed in by the TV. Okay, what about all the Americans in New York that saw planes with their eyes? And then it's like, oh yeah, that's holograms. That's it, holograms. Yeah. They're 20 years ahead of us. The military and things like that. They got these holograms that because Star Trek technology is real, right? That's what they're trying to say. Star Trek technology is real, and you can make holograms out in daylight, in broad daylight. No, this just isn't the case. So. And usually it's people trying to, sort of realize, okay, we're going down an avenue, must stick on the story. Let's fabricate something else to make it work. Effectively, it's one theory upon another, upon another. And as soon as you take the bottom one out, it just falls to pieces. So, but my absolute favorite one, and this is hilarious for me. So there's a video. In fact, I'll find the video because I might as well screen share it just for the lols worthy of it. So let me just find it. So it's one of the World Trade Center 7 building ones, and it's a BBC reporter. There we go. So, just going to screen share it. Okay, so this is the video. So, building's now collapsed.
And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack.
Probably can't hear this very well.
We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense down.
Now, there's something important there. Did you hear what she said? Details are very, very sketchy. Details are sketchy is press talk for, we've got an unconfirmed story, we're trying to get the information on it. That's basically all that is.
Town in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be...
And there's World Trade Center 7 right there. Now, the thing about it is that there was a screw up. That Reuters news agents, so they've got these news agencies, and what happens is you can't have a reporter everywhere in the world from, you know, say you work in London, or if you're in New York office or whatever, they're not going to have some, you know, a reporter in Bumsville, Idaho, you know, or out in the middle of Africa somewhere. What you'll have is local press who go out there, and then they feed it on to these press agencies, so Associated Press or whatever. And so what happens is they get fed out on the wire, as it's called. And, you know, if it's a big enough story, then, you know, 6 hours, 10 hours the next day, you'll have all the reporters from all over the world going to a location and saying, this is what's happening there in front of a microphone. When we had that bombing in Manchester a couple of months ago, it's the same thing. We had people from Australia, from Russia, Germany, all over Europe, America. People came from all over the world because it was a big thing, and, you know, Manchester's a well-known city. So what happens is, there she is, and the building's over her shoulder. And someone made a video saying that the reason why the BBC announced it early was because of the clock change. And I left a message under that video saying, bit of a problem, the clock's changed in October, not September. And so, and bear in mind, this is over 3 days of tapping away. You type something away, you get a response the next day when you get up. So the next day, I've got a response basically affirming the same thing, clock change. And I was snarky with them. I said, it's a nice conspiracy with only two problems. One, the clock's change in October. And two, the clock's change in October. Now, I know that strictly speaking, there's only one problem, but I thought it was such a big problem, it was worth mentioning twice. The following day, they changed the story. So the reason why the BBC announced it 1 hour early was because they were using European time, and they got it wrong. So, you know, the BBC at 0 hours GMT are going to use European time at +1 hours to talk to their New York office at -5 hours in a room full of clocks. It makes no sense. And not only that, back on you know, the September the 11th, 2001, the clocks changed the same day. It's not like today where, you know, this week it's 3 o'clock in the morning, or 3:40 in the morning now. And the Americans are a bit near, I think it is. We change up, our clocks go back this week and theirs go back next week. So that's where there's a contrast. But effectively, the clocks changed on the same day, and, you know, it'd be somewhere over at Greenland at like 3 in the morning, you know. But either way, it wouldn't make a difference because the clocks change in October. But the bit that's hilarious about it is BBC Television Centre in London, which they don't use anymore, the press office was a circular-ish room. And all the way around it, they had clocks. So if you want to know what time it is in Delhi, you look over your shoulder and you see what time it is in Delhi. If you want to know what time it is in LA, you look over there and you see what time it is in LA and New York and, you know, Australia and et cetera, et cetera. So you can work out what time everything is and, you know, obviously try and get the people in the right places at the right time. You know, that's how press work. But what happened in this case was that was a screw up. It was a busy day, and there was a lot of news flying all over the place, and contrasting things, conflicting things. I mean, at one point, the press talked about 20 aircraft had been hijacked, and that was just because there were aircraft that hadn't responded to radio calls, and so they were on the suspect list until they did respond to them. At which point they were told to land wherever it was they were told to land. So those are the kind of ideas, and it's amazing how much people will twist things in order to make them work. But I've talked too much already. So are you there, Chris? Steve? Sean, sorry.
Yes, I'm here.
So what's an example of one of the problems that you have?
Most of the problems that I have is mainly what happened before the actual planes hit, days before, months before, and after. And what we found out after, days after the terror attack. I clearly understand that it was a terror attack. We do know, regardless of where they were from, we do know it was a terrorist attack, and it was, they were from the Middle East, and that they're go for terror. I completely understand that. I almost think it's irrelevant why the different ideas of why the towers fell. The main factor of it all is it was terror. It was a terror attack, and that's all there is to it. And my view of it is the acknowledgement of it happening and what we could have done to stop it.
Okay. So your conspiracy idea is more they allowed them to do it.
Yes.
Okay. My reason for thinking that's not the case is there's a number of parts. Because the first, we'll go from the start, which is, obviously they were plotting something. They were trying to get in planes, and they were trying to go through flight school and kind of sucking at it. And there were reports showing that there were local, the train, the flight school guys, had reported to the police or the FBI, and it hadn't been acted on. The problem is that in hindsight, hindsight is 2020, and there's a couple of factors on this. The first one is effectively you've got a jigsaw puzzle without a picture, and you don't even know if these are pieces of a puzzle. So, and only afterwards, when you've got the picture idea of what's going on, you suddenly say, well, that piece there is a piece and that fits there. And this piece there, well, that's nothing. That piece there, that's a piece and that goes there. So, you're able to create a picture when you have the knowledge. And suddenly it's like, oh, gosh, there was that guy and, I didn't think about it. And now I'm going to report it. And suddenly that makes sense. So my way of thinking about it, do you remember the start of The Matrix?
Yes. Okay.
Do you remember the bit where Trinity is on a computer and it's a bit before she runs and jumps and spins and, that kind of thing. And the phone booth and bus crashes into it, I think it was. Well, what happens is the agents, I don't even know what we call them, but the agents, they turn up. And the police officer there says, and he says, like, you were told not to go in. And the police officer says, you can take that jurisdiction and stick it up your ass or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he says. And this is one of the problems that America had. I've been to New York. I've got photos out of the airplane window of the World Trade Center when it was still up. I was actually flying out there 6 weeks after it happened, worried that I've only got 45 minutes transition between one plane to another. I've got to go through I've got to check it. I've got to get my bags. I've got to go through immigration, get my bags, and check in again to get on another plane. But anyway, so you've got these different agencies and they don't like to talk to each other. I've been to New York. And what I would do is I'd fly into Newark Airport in New Jersey, and then I would go to the O'Connor Lodge. And in that area, you have at least half a dozen police agencies around there. You've got the New Jersey State Police, you've got the New York State Police, you've got the FBI, you've got the NYPD, you've got the Port Authority, you've got the Elizabeth Police, and all the other towns around it as well. So you've got all of them, and they've all got their own jurisdiction, and they don't like talking to each other. You've seen it in movies and TV shows and things like that. You know, this happens all the time. You know, they're protective of their little bit of, you know, turf.
Yeah.
And they fight over it, and they don't want to give information. And so effectively, when you've got that atmosphere, people slip through the holes. They slip through the gaps. So that's the reason why I don't find that very appealing. What do you think to that?
No, I completely agree. It's a battle for who's gonna get the big catch, basically. Who's gonna take the credit for the win. I completely understand that.
Do you think there's also you know, guy at flight school you know, contacts the police, who maybe contact the FBI, or he contacts the FBI, and he writes out a report and it sits in an outbox and it gets forgotten, or people don't understand, you know, they don't see an issue with it. It's, you know, it's just, yeah, someone's made a report of some Middle Eastern guy who he seems to be a really bad pilot.
Yeah, I think it's even for that, it's exactly like you're saying. You can't, you find a guy who maybe could have something to do with an organization, a terror organization. You don't want to jump at them, because then, you know, you could foul it all up and almost, you know, they'll go to plan B and you'll be completely off base. So I completely understand them not jumping at that aspect of it. Jumping the gun. At that point, you know, you get a report, and I think that's most likely when, at best, you would maybe start getting an investigation, maybe a few guys tailing them or something. But even that isn't going to give you they're going to take some planes and fly them into the tower. So I completely understand. That's almost just one ingredient of 100 ingredients that they would even need to put pieces together.
Yeah. One of the other ones, I think in the discussion we had about it, you know, because it was in the G Plus thread, I think the other one was about the planes flying off, you know, not enough fighter coverage, effectively.
Oh, you mean as they hit and whatnot? Yeah. Okay. I like I said, I don't have the biggest understanding of how planes maneuver. I mean, there are a few issues that I would have. I can't say that those are those are my points, and I'm done with my discussion, because that proves everything. I do have a issue with the fact that the plane made it through the building.
Right. Okay.
So it made contact, and you can clearly see nose out the other side. I'm actually for Tower 2. My father actually did surveying for Tower 2, so he has a very good understanding of how the towers were built. To have done that, like I said, there probably wasn't perfect trained cameras on that exact specific spot, but there to be a two frame structured building, it's hard to grasp, I guess, how it would make it all the way through. But then again, like I said, I don't know what the framing of that plane would be made of to hold it that way, because I do know, a small plane, it's a bird. I know an airliner is a completely different animal when it comes to that.
Right. We've got Tony, so
you want me to take that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you're right. But we're talking airplane. We're talking about I guess in the weight. I think the weight's about 200,000 pound object. If accelerated to about 500 knots, and everything in that plane. They talk about air and water and fuel. Everything's going to act like a friggin' solid until it hits that wall. And as it hits the wall, it's coming apart, but those pieces are still moving forward. So
not enough time to break apart completely. Or by the time I saw it, it's still go in different direction. Instant, like it's not as it shouldn't have happened as quick as you would think it would happen. Basically, right?
are you referring to the one video they show where it looks like its nose is coming back out of the?
Yeah.
Okay, that one.
It looks like smoke. It looks like some smoke. Effectively, it's an impact. It's the smoke that's come out at the end, and it happens to be in that kind of shape. When you see it from the other side, it doesn't look like the nose of a plane, but you do see the shape of the smoke still.
Okay, I can understand that. I can understand what you're saying. Again, like I said, I don't base that on my reasoning because I don't know enough about planes, and I definitely don't know enough about construct the framing of a plane to know that the impact explode forward as much as it would. I don't have that type of experience, so for me to use that is kind of a thing. But it is, those are the questions I have though, because I don't know.
Right. Okay. Well, there's an important thing to realize here, and that is that planes, yes, it's true they're made of aluminum, you'll call it, but when you get a plane, effectively it's a tube, and a tube form in this direction is its strongest form. It's like an egg. You can't crush it, in its longitudinal length. It is, I'll give you an example. A Coke can, just a regular soda can?
Yes.
Stand on one of those and just stand on top of it, put your heel on it or something and just stand on top and it will bear your entire weight. It's only
the strongest point.
Yeah, it's only if you just give it a little nudge and make a little kink, it will just collapse.
Yeah.
Aeroplanes are exactly the same kind of thing. Their longitudinal length. The reason why aeroplanes are the shape they are is because they are they go through cycles, pressurization cycles. They, effectively the air pressure is pushing out, so the outside pressure pushing in, the inside pushing out. So the reason why the doors go on the inside and then push outwards, because the force is pushing out. The pressurization on the inside of the aircraft is pushing the door out. So it's designed to, not go on the outside because it can be pushed out that way. But I'm rambling. So you have certain parts of the wing structure, for example. So the struts that are horizontal. So imagine here's the shape of your wing. Mm-hmm. You've got a whole series of them, like the ribs of your body, and then the aluminium is over the top of that. One of the amusing ones, in fact, I'll grab one because it's easier to show you.
About to add, the wings are also full of liquid.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives it a little bit more strength behind it.
It will act like a solid.
As in where the points where they connect, where they meet to the body, does the frame of the wing go inside the plane, or is it
yes, it goes inside the plane. The strut, the lift from the struts transfers to the rest of the fuselage.
Okay, so that's what makes it a one piece rather than the two wings just hanging out. Okay.
Yeah, much. Across the section here, they've got it's called a box section, the wing box it's called, and it's effectively a large steel section where it's designed to all slot together. But one of the amusing truth claims is that there was a missile underneath. Because steel, aluminium planes can't penetrate steel building. It's strange how they seem to think it was made out of solid steel. It wasn't. It was, I don't know if you've ever seen the construction of it.
Of the tower, yeah, the towers. No, just like you're describing the ribs on the plane, the ribs of the building were steel. Not, the outside casing isn't steel. I understand that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Effectively, the building was made out of these waffle-shaped panels. So you've got 3 horizontal and 3 vertically, and these are box girder sections. So it's like it's got 4 sides to it. So it's a square tube, effectively. And
yeah, built like a manufactured house, basically.
Yeah, and at the top
the
of
walls.
them, you can just about see here, they've got these holes where they've got big bolts. You can just see the bolts sticking up there. And so they basically drop the next panel on top of it and then bolt it together. So it's only held together by bolts. It's not like it's, you haven't got 120, 110-story beams, solid straight beams.
Oh, yeah. And I think the beams themselves are, I believe, at 12 to 16 feet apart. I think that's at the center, if I remember correctly.
Well, there's 2 aspects to it, because effectively there's 2. It's not the best picture. That's okay, but it's a shallow angle. I want something a bit better than that.
Yeah, it's basically 2 different buildings in one.
Well, one of the cunning designs of this building was, so I live in a building that's that's a steel scaffold, and it's basically just a multi-cubed structure. So every maybe 6 feet, there's another column, vertical column. And so if you look at the center block here, that's done in the standard box girder construction. So you've got columns very close together. But what they did with, but the problem with making a big building like this in that form is that you end up with, if you can see how many columns are across here, you'd end up with a column there and a column there and a column there and a column there, and you'd end up with about 5 columns. Well, imagine you're in a building and you want to make a wide open office, but you've got these big towers in the way. They're basically metal columns with a bit of plasterboard around them, to cover them. And so you've got this, these lumps in the middle of the room all the time. And so, usually they hide these things by, having a wall as it, and then having a door through, one of them. But when you want to have an office, you may want to have, a wide open office or a large meeting room. And you can't do that when you've got whopping great columns in it. So the clever design of this building was to have the center core where the lift chutes are, and water and electricity and all those conduits going up and down the building. And then coming out from it, what they did was they put the distance, I think I saw there. It's not our best example, but the center core is like this, and on the outside they're much closer together. So instead of having wide open gaps, so maybe every 3 there would be a column, they've gone and moved all the inner columns to the outside and reduced the distance. So it's still got the same outside, the outside strength, but and it's held together between. No, that's not the one. Let's see if we got. It used to be so much easier before they built a new building. That's not too bad. So what you've got is you've got sort of L-shaped brackets on the sides, on one side and then the other, and then you've got it's basically some sort of some zigzag pair of beams with zigzags on them, and then they lay corrugated iron on top, and then they pour concrete on it.
Yeah.
So it's very simple, really. And get ahead of it a bit, but the reason why the building fell in the way that it did was because the floors sagged Effectively, what happened was these were heated up to a certain point where they started to drop down, and so they started to pull the outside walls in. And when the first building to fall, World Trade Center 7, falls, you can see it's bowed right in. Let's see if we can find it.
Yeah, I think there was a few videos where you can see the roof, the middle, basically collapsing before the sides.
Yeah.
That was the second tower to fall.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. The
South,
first
I think.
it was the second to fall. So let's see if. Okay, I think this is a good point, actually. So you can just about make out that it's bowed in. Let's see if we can watch the frames going. It's a bit early there. Okay, this is just before it collapsed. So you can kind of make out that they kind of go in a little bit. It's a bit like I said with the soda can. You know, you put a kink in it and it makes it weaker. But this area here, you can see this stuff falling out. People say it's molten steel. It's not. It's probably almost certainly aluminium. You know, and people will say, "Oh, the color was wrong." No, the color of aluminium. You look at a foundry, and where they're doing aluminium, same color. You know, and what I believe is that this is the opposite side. So the plane came over that direction, and then came in, and so bits came out there and bits came out there. But this area here is effectively where the debris of the plane is. So it's all resting up against this. It's hot. It's been on fire for a while, you know. And these.
Yeah, I'm sure the inside walls are going to melt, and I mean, there's 100 things that are going to do that.
But when this building collapses, you kind of see it snap. Just waiting for there's a. You can see how these ones are pretty straight, but these ones are kind of going in. They're not on the same line as that.
Mm.
This is horrible to watch. It's about to go now. There you go. Can you see how it's folding in?
Yeah.
I'll zoom out for a moment. There you go. Did you see it?
Yes.
I'm gonna go back just for a second. You just watch it pinch in. There you go. It just pinches in. And that's where the wall, the floor struts going across have dropped down because of the heat. Because this idea that, you know, melt steel beams, it doesn't have to melt them. It has to reduce, all it has to, at 600 degrees Celsius, and the temperatures were more like 1200 Celsius, at 600 degrees, steel loses half its strength. Gravity.
I think it's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I think it takes at 600.
No, quicker than that.
Oh, really?
It's quicker than that. I used to do heat forming, and we only had to get up about 500 to 800 degrees, and it starts bending.
It starts its warping process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as soon as it's hot, it's going to bend.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a perfect example is Uri Geller with his bending spoons thing. He rubs it. He's already weakened it, but he rubs it, and it gets to a certain temperature where it's enough to make it bend. That's a crude analogy, but it works. And with this, you can see this corner falls in, and the top of the building is literally folding in on itself. It fell sideways at the top. But you know, yeah, we've kind of diverted a bit because we were talking about planes before. So because it's got these wide open offices, there's a lot more space for debris to fall through. So when you see, you know, I think it's an engine and fuselage and one of the landing gear, you know, these are being propelled through it at high speed. Now, there's something else that that comes up on, you know, many truther you know, claims, is that planes like this can't go at 500 miles an hour at sea level, and it's not true at all. They can go that speed. This is an Airbus A330, but Boeing has a standard test for any new aircraft that they produce. And effectively, they bend the wings. They bend them until they snap. And their standard is 150% of the maximum workload that is expected. So 100% is the maximum workload. Okay, so that is, you know, the worst turbulence you can imagine, where luggage is falling out of the overhead lockers, and you know, you think the fillings are going to fall out of your teeth. You know, and you people are vomiting all over the place. That is, you know, the worst turbulence you can get, and they're designed for 150%, half that again. You know, they're designed to be pretty rugged. But the other thing is that when people say they can't, it's not like that at all. Because what they do is they look at you know, the manuals, and they say, well, what the speed is supposed to be. The problem is that the speeds are based upon longevity. A plane like this costs hundreds of millions of dollars. So you want to get the maximum amount of usage out of it, because you're not just buying one, you might be buying 10 or 20 or 50 or whatever for an airline. So they want to get the most amount of usage out of it, which is about 30 years. And even after 20, they might get rid of them and go to another company that uses them for another 5 years, and then another company that, you know, uses them for another 5 again. So they use them until, you know, and what they go through is pressurization cycles. What happens with civilian airliners is that they're designed for X amount of cycles. So a cycle being, it flies up under pressure, it lands. It flies up, it lands. That's 2 cycles, and so on. There are some places in the world, such as Japan, where they have a lot of people flying, but they're not going very far. It's a smallish island. So as a result, they have, you know, shorter, you know, more seats in them, and they fly shorter journeys. So they last less time because they've gone through more pressurization cycles. But the whole point behind it is that you don't, you know, it's a bit like a car. If you treat every green light as the start of a race and every red light as an emergency stop, it's not going to take long before your car doesn't work very well anymore. And it's the same for planes. So they design them, they design the limits for longevity and passenger comfort. Because if it takes off like a rocket, you know, that's not much fun for, you know, sort of little old lady or someone with a big belly like me, you know, so things like that. That's where, you know, the whole the idea, and the other thing is, I happen to know somebody who worked for Rolls-Royce. He's retired now. And I asked him specifically, I said, you know, can these engines go that fast at sea level? And he said, yes, they're not supposed to, but yes, they can. You know, and again, it's longevity. You know, at low level, at high level, they go fast because you know the air is thinner and it's there's less drag, so that makes it cheaper to operate. Whereas at low level, the air is thick, and I don't know if you've ever ever looked, but military aircraft cost a hell of a lot more than these things, even though they were. And the reason is because they're designed to fly at low levels as well. You know, you take something like a C-130 Hercules. They were designed after the Berlin airlift, and so the idea is that they land like this. They don't land like this as normal airplane is. They're designed to come in like that, scoop flat, and then land and take off like this as well.
Weren't they when they built those? They used in mind that they may need to land on a carrier size landing pad, right? Not a carrier,
They're
but
looking at that. Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I frequented many air shows, and that's actually one of the favorite ones with the rockets, and I think it's what
JTO.
16 rockets or something. Yeah,
JTO, just assisted takeoff. Yeah, so like I say, things like that. The other one, and I mentioned it a little earlier, was this idea that there's a let's have a look. So find pod.
I think there was a pod mounted on the bottom of the fuselage.
Yeah. So
go look for that one.
Let me go for this one because I find this one comical. There's a factor that they miss.
There's no place to actually mount it, but.
Oh, here's the guy. It looked like a grey plane. Yes, United Airlines color scheme was grey. It was exactly that. So people look at this bulge here. Oh, look, it's a missile. No. And they'll show a picture in a second. You know, and they're basically looking at that lump sticking out the bottom. Okay. And what it is, it's to basically say, oh, it's an aluminium plane, it couldn't penetrate the building. And as I've showed before, it's made out of waffle, so a plane hits a building, it's just going to snap those bolts and bend that metal in, just smash the pieces in, because it's going at a hell of a speed. You know, the kinetic energy involved is monstrous. You know, and not only that, there's if you look on Wikipedia and there's photos of it, in the 1940s, a B-25 bomber crashed into the Empire State Building. And that was a building with the columns, you know, the standard columns in it. You know, just columns with concrete on it. And it penetrated that. And that was a plane flying at low speed. It lost in fog. Also made out of aluminium. A lot lighter as well. And that could in fact, one of the engines went through and the other one went down the lift, the elevator shaft.
Engine and one of the landing gear went straight through the building.
Yeah.
Wasn't one of the issues with the towers that when the plane did hit, the planes both hit, or the planes hit, that the water system was damaged, right?
Oh, that was World Trade Center 7. Effectively, what happened was when the building collapsed, the sprinkler system didn't work because it didn't have a water supply because they'd been damaged by the collapse of the buildings nearby.
Okay.
Across the street, basically. So it damaged the water mains.
I believe the towers actually they had water below the impact zones, but anything above the impact zones were cut off.
Oh right, okay. I think
okay.
This really needs cleaning. It's been dusty, sat on the top of my desk, shelf for a while. Anyway, so yeah, that's right. Anyway, so the pod. Now the thing about it is, planes like these, they got these lumps sticking out the side here. It's where the fuselage goes. But the amusing thing about it is that that's where the wheels go. So if there was a missile underneath, how did they get the wheels up? It's a really simple concept, but really, it's quite simple. And the problem is that they show, if you've seen that loose change video, they showed a really deceptive photo because it's a white plane on a different angle and you can't really see those bulges. And I'm just trying to get it to start because I'm into planes in quite a big way. Come on. I'll wait for the hard drive to spin up. Gosh, it's acting slow today.
Yeah, I think, and plus a lot of the issue with, not for me so much, because I kind of understand that I don't really know much about for one, the plane, and then, the contact of the plane into the buildings, how any of that would work under those circumstances. I think a lot of people aren't willing to understand. They need to learn about it first, I guess, before they spit it out. I do have a lot of questions like that, but like I said, it's those aren't the points that I want to say is the reason for my feelings. But I mean, so I may have a lot of questions about the situation, but I don't want them to come across as my reason.
No, that's fine. I mean, like I say, I'm really talking to an audience here for other people.
Yeah. I also wanted to say for that too, because I don't want it to make it seem like I'm just sitting back, letting my feelings not be said. But the reason is because I have a lot of questions and I want to hear the reasons. The reasons I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, this is what I'm trying to illustrate for you. Just ideas. So if you come across these, it's like, I've learned about this one there. That's just really silly. But this is exactly the same type of plane in the same color scheme with the same gray bands underneath, and you can see there's a bulge where the undercarriage goes. You can see there's the undercarriage coming down or going up probably. And of course, when they say it was a big gray plane, yes, it was a big gray plane. It's gray on the top and it's got gray wings and it's got a gray tail, tail planes, and the rudder's blue and bits on the underside are blue, but it is generally a big gray plane,
especially at 5+ 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, I mean, effectively you've got, I mean, if you've seen the video, this thing came rocketing out of nowhere and suddenly like, woof, going flying over the heads. And the guy that said, oh, it was a big gray plane, it was a military plane, and that's actually another factor. So the US Air Force have got something called the KC-46. It's the new tanker to replace the KC-135s that they've been using for, since the 1960s, which is Boeing 707 based. But there weren't any military 767s at the time. There were actually, that's not quite true. There were 5. The Japanese had East Asia, Japanese. So the Japanese had 4, and there's this thing that kind of sticks out about them. The big massive radome on top. And these airplanes exist today. But the US Air Force, I think it was, had one. And it was the prototype 767. And, there's a funny little factor about it that kind of sticks out. Again, it's got a huge, massive hump on the back. And it existed until 2007. There's a picture of it, I think, in the boneyard somewhere. There you go. So it existed until, I think it was 2007. And that was the only military one in the US. Because all the 767 airliners, 777, 737s, they're all built at Boeing Field up in Everett, in Washington State. They're all built there. And you can't just go and, because the jigs to build them are all there. So that's where you build it. And every day there's a tour around the factory. And the aviation enthusiasts, the airliner enthusiasts, they go around on these tours and they note down the tails, because the first thing they paint on a new plane is the tail. And they write down the numbers on them. And they write down the ones that are on test around the area and things like that. So they tell the airliner magazines, that this one is being, this one's about to be ordered, and this one's left, so it's been, it's being delivered now, etc. So you can't sneak them out of the factory, So the idea of remote controlled planes that, that they fitted remote control stuff on them, even that doesn't work, because prior to then they weren't really making 767 so much at the time. They'd moved on to 777s primarily, larger and cheaper to operate. And the 767 is a rather old-fashioned plane. It has hydraulics and so when the guy pulls the control levers, it's going to cables and pulleys, and it's then got hydraulics, and it's got some servo assistance, which is kind of like power steering in a car, so that he can pull, and he's not pulling the entire mechanism of the tail or the rudder or whatever, or the ailerons. He's got the assistance that provides more power for him. Because could you imagine how much pressure it would take to pull the tail backwards and forwards on a plane that big? It would be colossal. So, when they take an old jet fighter and they turn it into a target drone for literal remote control, so a QF-16 or QF-106 or QF-4 Phantom, Q being remote controlled. When they take one of those planes, they have to strip it down and rebuild it effectively. They have to, alter all the insides so it can be fitted remote control. That takes them 6 months to do that.
I had a question about that.
And the plane's been serviced the day before.
What about when they came out with the off the top of my head, I don't remember, the flight terminus system? When did they start putting those in planes?
The flight what system?
The flight. As far as what I've read up on it, and I know they've only I think the past 3-4 years have actually started using them in like the NASA's equipment. That it's the flight terminate system.
I don't know what that.
So
not by that name.
It's well, that's what I got it under. It's
Describe what it does.
Flight.
Just describe what it does.
In a situation of as what I read, as a malfunction happens and the pilot isn't able to use the controls, it's able to shut the manual controls off and be controlled off a different site.
No such animal.
No such actually, animal. I'm not saying that had anything to do with it, but I can tell you now, there 100% is. NASA, who makes it? Oh,
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, they're trying to effectively. It's not what you're talking about. Effectively, what it is, it's a precise navigational aid, so that they can tell better where they are. So that if it's foggy and they can't see, and they can't really land it manually, then it's more precise on where it is. So it can be guided in by ground control. So they can say, you need to turn X degrees and things like that. They effectively, it's a bit like GPS, but it's adding some extra ones in the decimal point.
I found the because I pulled it off and I put it in my little note side on the computer. It's the flight termination system. FTS is a fully redundant turnkey range safety and test system for remote control and flight termination of airborne test vehicles. The FTC consists of a SPC's command transmitter system and custom control interface and monitoring subsystem.
So it would be fitted to civilian aircraft?
Civilian, yes, civilian aircraft, and I know NASA was using it before them. I know they had it in. They're starting to put them in most of their crafts going to ISS. That those have them in them. And that, I mean, as far as I know, that system was going in 2000. They were doing, that's when that system, the notes I have it from was from the system in 2000.
You got any links you could shoot me?
Yeah, I'll put it in the side chat right now. This is the one I just read from.
Okay, I saw that.
I'm having my own computer problems at the moment. Let me.
This is actually the one.
This is thing. Some
Right.
launch systems using flight termination for range safety, and those in the RSO can remotely command the vehicle to self-destruct to prevent it from traveling outside prescribed safety zone.
I don't think they would fit something like that to a civilian aircraft. Like a range safety package on a missile.
Yeah.
That's the one I went. Where is it? I'll try to find one.
Okay, I think I've found it. Autonomous flight termination. Both ATK and SpaceX have been developing autonomous flight termination systems. Both systems use GPS-aided computer control system to terminate an off-nominal flight, supplementing or replacing the more traditional human-in-the-loop monitoring system. ATK's autonomous flight system made its debut on the 19th of November 2013 at NASA's Wallops flight facility. The system was jointly developed by ATK facilities in Ronkonkoma, New York, Plymouth, Minnesota, and Promontory Point. Developed by SpaceX is included in the prototype development vehicle SpaceX used in 2013 and 14 to test its reusable rocket technology development program. Well, this is missiles. Not missiles. Rockets go into orbit. This doesn't sound like the same thing. The U.S. Air Force is using it. That's for rocket launches to launch satellites and things.
Yes, they would never install this on a commercial aircraft, or for that matter, a manned aircraft. You lose somebody?
No, I'm still here. I'm just reading.
The other gentleman.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was muted. The links that I'm looking at now, I'm trying to just find one that that actually has a better description in it. But they are I don't know if they're planning or how long they've been doing it, but they are putting them in commercial airlines.
Well, the one I've heard about the commercial airline is just a way to ironically, it's not necessarily making it easier to make them land. It's the idea is to make more space, because at the moment they have to have 1,000 feet of separation, and they want to reduce it so they can get more planes in. And the only way they can the problem with an altimeter is that it's not completely accurate. It's based upon air pressure, so as a result, it has a deviation of +1, plus minus. I think it was 60 feet or something. So it's not fantastic for being very precise. It's actually one of the other reasons why one of the 9/11 conspiracy ideas makes no sense at all. In fact, for me, it's my killer argument against the controlled demolition stuff. And it's fairly simple. So when you look at so when you look at the buildings, they're fairly featureless. There's not a lot to them, except for a couple of stripes, in the middle of it. There's really, and there's a lot of floors between each set. You talk about 110, so, 32, 33 floors. 33, yeah. So you got quite a number of floors between. Now, one of the ideas is that they rigged the buildings to explode, and that the planes came in, and then they triggered the explosion. There's a big problem with that, though, because, and it really comes down to a simple question, which is, well, why use planes then? Because in order for this to work, okay, so when you rig a building up for controlled demolition, what you do is you drill into the columns and you plant explosives. You basically weaken the column by drilling holes in them to make them less strong, and you plant your explosives on it. And then you have wires, cables, going to a box. It's a radio receiving box. Effectively, it receives a radio signal and triggers the explosives to go. And they're designed to either do them in a sequence, or they can all go at the same time. It depends on what form they're trying to do. So so somewhere else, someone will have the plunger, or whatever you want to call it, just a button to press, and at the given moment, you press the button and it sends a signal, which then sends the signal, the wire, going boom with detonate the explosives. Now, in order for this to work, you've got to crash a plane at a specific point. Just to show you the picture again. So, in order to do this, if you want, if you've got your explosives planted up here, and you need the plane to crash there. If it crashes down there and starts to crumble up there, it's going to look wrong. If the plane crashes there and it starts to crumble down here, it's going to look wrong. You need the building to crumble where the plane's hit. So you've got to crash a plane at an excessive speed, at a fairly featureless building, at the place where your explosives are laid, without damaging any control boxes, any wires, or any explosives. And you've got to have a part of that building on fire for an hour without damaging any cables or wire, control box or explosives. And then you've got to have one building land on another building so you can start a fire, so that you can use that as justification to bring down the third building by controlled demolition. This is now an uncontrolled demolition, because there are so many things that can go wrong in this sequence. It would be much easier to plant your explosives and leave a, you know, if you're nice, you make a phone call and say there's explosives in the building. The IRA do this. Or if you're nasty, you just blow it up with people. And then you fabricate evidence to blame whoever you want to blame. If you want to go after bin Laden, you say Al-Qaeda. If you want to go after Saddam, you know, or Gaddafi, you say they did it. You know, you fabricate the evidence, say, oh, see, look, this is, you know, things like that. That would be much more feasibility. So as soon as you include planes crashing into buildings, it becomes crazy. It just makes no sense doing it that way.
Okay. As in that, using that as a reason, that would be the exact, that kind of comes to the point where my feelings come into play with it. That is almost exactly what happened with Pearl Harbor. We know, we have documentation and we have transcripts of warnings that that Japanese planes were coming into the airspace. There's actually short footage showing almost letting them coming to more than half the inside the range of the gunners, way past their range. And we also know that we needed a reason to go to war with Japan. We needed a reason to get engaged in World War II, and it was perfect. That we know that's exactly how that happened.
Okay, but why would that have anything to do with 9/11? I mean, you know, the reasons are not the same. I mean, you know, let's say it's justification to go after Al-Qaeda and then Iraq. Okay, that's the justification for it. Why do that? I mean, effectively, you're going to have to destroy buildings, create an upstir. So many things can go wrong. And of course, you know.
But if something goes wrong, it's not on them.
What I'm trying to say is that they couldn't even keep Bill Clinton's, they couldn't, you know, it got leaked that Bill Clinton couldn't keep his penis in his pants. Mm-hmm. And yet somehow they managed to keep all this secret. You know, no one's ever managed to leak anything out of all the thousands of people that would have to be involved to make this work.
Okay, so
and also, well, give me a sec. The other problem is that the reason for going to war in Iraq, you know, it was like, okay, we're now going to go after these people that do these sorts of things. I mean, ironically, what's going on with North Korea is somewhat linked to 9/11. It's a weird way of doing it, but effectively, you know, George Bush makes his Axis of Evil speech, you know, and Saddam tries to fight it. He fails. He dies. Libya, Gaddafi decides he's going to play ball because being on that list isn't very healthy for people in the long run, and he's not a very strong nation, certainly compared to Iraq. So, you know, he decides to play ball and get people to come and buy the oil and get rid of sanctions and things like that. And then he looks weak internally, and then the Arab Spring kicks off, and he ends up dead. You know, with a little civil war going on, which is still partially going on. And so for North Korea, it's like, neither of these people are doing very well. I know I'll get nuclear weapons because that means I've got a nuclear deterrent. They won't touch me then. You know, because they're another.
But the issue with that is that we know North Korea's had nuclear technology. We know they've been advancing it. The difference with that is we have been trying to catch Saddam with weapons of mass destruction. Even when we were saying that we wanted to go investigate, we have documents saying that we have documents from Iraq and its government officials saying, hey, come and investigate. And between 9/11 and within 2 years of that, there was no response from our government to go and inspect these things. We had plans. We have documentation plans of going to trying to figure out a reason to go to war with Iraq. We know that Saddam was actually against Al Qaeda. He was completely against terrorism because he thought as terrorism as a threat to his regime.
Well, I mean, the sad thing about it is my country's intelligence service. The Americans were getting a lot of their intelligence off the British. Unfortunately, we were hoodwinked. Now, the thing you have to remember about the Iraq War is Saddam was playing poker. He was telling his neighbors, "Don't touch me because I got all these scary weapons." Because remember, Iran and Iraq had a war not that long ago.
But see, you're right. He was saying that with Iran and all that, but the problem is that he was still giving us the invitation, or he was still giving the United States the invitation to inspect his facilities.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, I was going on to that. So what happens is they send in the weapons inspectors, Hans Blix and his team, okay? And what happened was he was met by, generals and people in, these facilities, looks like a chemical facility, or it looks like some kind of weapons facility or something. They send in the weapon inspectors and they get told, no, you can't come in. He was stalling. He was effective, and so again, he's playing poker. On one side, he's saying to his neighbors, "I've got all these scary weapons." To the west, he's saying, "No, I haven't got these weapons at all."
Do you know what year that was in when that was happening?
Sorry?
You know what year that was happening in when we were actually going to inspect?
Yeah, that was happening in late 2001 into 2002.
If I remember correctly, I think that was in '99.
Well, I mean,
maybe into 2000
a bit, but they, I don't remember that part.
Well, see, these are the things that, like I was saying, those are the things that I was trying to say that I look into, to have those reasons. I mean, we can go all the way back to 1987, I think it was, when we started having these weapons of mass destruction and weapons with chemicals, biochemicals in them. So that was when everything started with Saddam. That was the problem we had. By that time, in the early 90s, mid 90s, we knew he was using bioweapons. That was basically Kuwait. That was a Kuwait war. That was the reason we were there in 97, 98, 99. And then into
the Kuwait war was in 1991.
No, I'm sorry. You're right.
I was leaving school. That was going on.
Hey, gentlemen, we're getting a little off track here.
Well, no, because this is the beginning of where my point comes.
Controlled demolition, and
it's kind
but
of
at some point. But the thing is, at some point in this discussion, I have to be able to have my reason. I mean, we've also been streaming for over an hour, and if my point isn't the buildings, then I have to sit and not say anything.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, you're right. Okay, I want to point out that you have to remember politicians and what politicians are like, and what people they've got, greasing their hands with contracts and stuff like that. So is it, is it Halliburton? I think they're called. One of these private security companies. Or oil companies or whatever, and they got private security, and it's isn't it a weird coincidence how that contract went to a company that Dick Cheney, I think it was, had lots of
he gets paid to rebuild.
I mean, think about it this way. Let's just put it down to yes. People will take a national tragedy and think, how can I make some money out of this? I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it's a part of a big conspiracy. It's a case of, okay, we're going to go into war. I mean, here's the thing. America got itself into trillions and trillions of debt to fight this war for a long time, including Afghanistan. Okay. If they wanted to just get rid of Saddam, or if they wanted to, if they wanted to make sure he didn't have any weapons, all they had to do was say, You make sure we know you've got no weapons, and we'll release sanctions on you.
No, see, the problem with that is then Saddam was holding his cards because he had well, for one, he knew that if his regime wasn't there, the Middle East would become a power vac. It would just implode on itself. He had control of the mass oil transits. He knew it. He knew that if he messed everything up, it would be catastrophic for the United States. His involvement in the oil trade had everything to do with our dollar.
Well, but that's the problem. It was the opposite. I mean, I remember, because I told you I was flying out to America every 6 months at the time. It was May and November I was flying out. Okay, and in 2003, I think it was. So the Iraq War just kicked off, and the price of oil went through the roof. I mean, I was panicking because, I mean, at that time, the pound to the dollar wasn't too bad. It was about $1.7 to the pound. And I was able to do the entire trip for £500, which is about $750, I think, at the time. So it was effectively £200 for the room, £200 for the flight, and about £100 spending money. I was only going out there for 5 days and then coming back. So it wasn't a big, wasn't spending loads of money or anything and having to rent hotels or anything. It was just going off to Poconos, staying in a hotel complex with a bunch of friends, chatting and doing stuff, and then, fly back. So it was fantastic. In fact, a little while ago, my Skype chirped, and it was one of the people I met there. Anyway, so I was flying out there, and the prices were going like £400 for a flight, and all my friends were thinking, this is getting annoying. They're buying it. I was lucky. I managed to buy it. It'd be a long-winded thing, but effectively, when you buy a flight, the way to get it cheap is, they effectively sell them in blocks, and the next block will be higher, and the next block will be higher, and so the price goes up. But what happens is that it gets close towards when the flight's supposed to be flying, and the middlemen, the consolidators, they kind of panic and say, well, no one's getting on these seats. We've still got 80 seats left on that plane. And then they drop the price, and that's when you swoop in and buy. And I was fortunate. I got a flight for £138, and other people were paying $420. So people hated me that week. But what I mean is the price of oil going up is bad for economies.
Exactly, and that's what he knew he had control over.
Well, the problem is that starting a war made the price go up.
Okay, but Saddam didn't care if the price went up. That was his whole point of everything. Release these sanctions, or you guys will pay. He knew that the people around him didn't matter. He didn't care if they were working with the United States. It made no difference to him. He knew that United States, there's no time that the United States will ever go to war with a country for selfish reasons. They're not going to say, America, we were worried about our oil prices, we're going in. They're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen.
Vietnam
was for the people. That was their whole point. That's why there was so much rebellion against them. Huh?
It was to stop the spread of communism.
Exactly. For the their whole basis, okay, but their basis was that the people are suppressed by this evil leader. We're going in to save them. And along with that, we don't want communism to spread. Now we're really getting off topic.
Yeah.
So we'll go back. So we've been before 9/11. We were constantly trying to either find out where his weapons facilities were, and yes, before 9/11, he was making it very difficult. That is when he was saying, "Yeah, come on in." You get there, and it happened to be a gas station almost. Basically, that's how assaulting it was. And that was when the president and Cheney started drawing up papers, and that's why on December 10th, that's when the paper was laid out on his table of ways to go to war with Iraq. This is documented. You can go into the archives and you can find these things. So that's the biggest smoking gun of before it happened. Now, like I said, I didn't say that they hired people to get in the planes. I didn't say that they cut beams.
Mhm.
All it takes to be a conspiracy is it for not to be how it seems. All it takes is we want to go to war with Iraq. This happens. It gives us a reason to. We do know for a fact now, and 2 occasions officially, that this is an option that our government is more than willing to do. That is Pearl Harbor. We have Operation Northwood. We had an issue with Cuba. Why not go just fight with Cuba? Why did they draw up the plans? Why did Operation Northwood why is Operation Northwood if this idea is so far-fetched?
Well, the whole thing with Cuba in the end was that they made an agreement.
Okay, but my question was why the United States drew up the plan to do a false flag to be able to invade Cuba. Why would America do that, but you not believe that it's possible now?
Well, I mean, the story was different with Cuba because, again, Cuba was a part of the Cold War type stuff, reducing communism. Because the thing, I don't know if you understand the history of what went on. Effectively, what happened was, the Batista government, prior to Castro taking over, they were a corrupt government. And they, they added pockets lined by rich American businessmen. And so the poor average people were suffering. And so Castro got his group together and basically had a coup and took over and booted America out. Okay.
And they said, well, no one else, you're not trading with nobody then.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. Effectively, what basically happened was that he took over for the people. It was a revolution for the people. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's from the Castro point of view, but what happened was he privatized American-owned businesses in Cuba and said, sorry, tough, go away. This is our country. Okay. Now, what happened was the following year, 49, no, I forgot what year it was now. But the following year, he went off to America to try and reach some kind of trade negotiation because the main crop was basically sugar. And he went over there, and Eisenhower refused to meet him, just plain refused to meet him. He went and played golf, and he met with the vice president, and he basically went home empty-handed, and couldn't get a deal there. And Russia said, "We'll give you a reasonable price for your sugar." And by the way, can we put some missiles on your as part of the Cold War? You want to get your missiles in strategic places. That's their point of view. And America went, no, you don't. And so that's what the Cuban Missile Crisis was. That's the short version of it, but effectively that was it. And in the end, they made an agreement to, okay, you get rid of your missiles now, because it got so close. I mean, the whole red phone thing where you can phone up Moscow, that came about due to the missile crisis because they didn't have very good channels of communication. They weren't talking to each other directly. And so what ended up happening, they said, okay, and it was Bobby Bush, I think it was, who basically went on a clandestine meeting and said, hey, look, I'll tell you what we'll do is, if you get rid of your missiles now, in 6 months, we'll get rid of ours in Turkey. Quid pro quo. And, that'll stop the problem. And so that's exactly what happened. And it was done 6 months after, so it didn't look like we were connected, but they were, And it was all to stop the spread of communism. That's all it was for that. Now, of course, there were attempts before then to get rid of Castro, but then, effectively it grew in intensity and turned into the Cuban Missile Crisis. Effectively, but Cuba
you're saying
was a proxy for through the Cold War.
But okay, so you've explained that it was different reasons, but you're not explaining to me why it's possible that it could happen. You're telling me that the Iraq War and 9/11 are two different things. You're saying that it doesn't make sense and it's not possible, or for reasoning that the United States would not do this. But we have two instances where, whether it happened or it was planned to happen, the United States did plan for the actuality of U.S. casualties to be able to go to war. Now, if you're telling me, hang on, right? But if you're telling me that that's not possible, then you're completely saying that the Operation Northwood didn't exist, but we do know it did.
Could I get in here for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I'm former military. We make all kinds of plans for all kinds of contingencies, not just Northwood. We even have plans to either invade or defend ourselves from Canada. And I dare say it, they're probably somewhere in a vault somewhere, there's our invasion plans for Great Britain. Just because we have come up with a plan for something doesn't necessarily mean we're going to act on it. And they showed Northwood to Kennedy, and he said, out of here with this bullshit. He pretty much ripped it up and fired the guy.
But regardless of if they have contingencies to be able to act upon any situation, whether it's Hawaii decides to go against it doesn't matter. It's still a plan. So if doesn't mean we're going to. That plan is to. Okay, so if the plan is to take an aircraft and simulate that whatever country we don't like is going to blow it up, and that telling me that just because they wrote it up, it makes it nothing?
It just means they've made a contingency or a plan to do something. Doesn't mean to say they're going to carry it out. Okay, so you're saying if they did come up with a document, if they found a document that said what we want Great Britain back, we want to call it America, and they find this document and it's not if it's classified or whatever, if it's declassified, they find it, you're going to tell me your government is going to go, well, it was their contingency plan, or you think they'll take that as a threat? Probably not, because obviously our relationship is much better than it was, back in the 1776 kind of an idea.
Okay, well then even more than I would think your government would take it more offense to it then.
Well, I mean, a simple example of that is, we didn't take offense when the Russians, showed that they had a contingency for taking over Britain, including
but at the same time,
including in my area, including in Manchester, not London.
Okay, but
Manchester, including
the difference between that is
of the bridges were, so where the tanks could go over them, things like that.
There's a problem though. You're saying, well, Russia did. Well, Russia has always been what we know as an enemy, as we know as the other guys. It's not the same. You can't compare our United States and Britain's relationship with Britain and Russia's relationship. That's like saying, well, we helped Al Qaeda, but Russia and Al Qaeda, they were going to, that's like worrying about them. It's not the same thing. They've always been at war. They've always hated each other. We've trained them, and that has zero to do with 9/11. So just let's get that when I'm saying that, as I don't think that had anything to do. But we trained Al Qaeda soldiers. We trained guys in Afghanistan when they fought the Russians. Why? Because we were at war. We were in a Cold War with the Russians. So if we can get them to fight them, perfect. So to compare Russia with the United States and to Britain's relationship it's apples and oranges.
Well, I agree in that sense. I mean, you brought up attacking Britain, so No,
but I was because what both of you made it sound like is, but what you both made it sound like was, well, a contingency plan is just a contingency plan. Who cares?
Well,
the problem is that
plan is based upon what happens if. Whereas
but a contingency plan,
the hypothetical plans. Okay, we've crunched the numbers and we think that we could win if we did this effectively.
Okay, but here's the problem with what you're saying.
Plan.
But what you're saying is, a contingency plan is, well, if Russia aims a missile at us, what do? If all of a sudden we see German U-boats off our coast, what do we do? Those are contingency plans. A contingency plan is not a detailed ideal for what to do. You're
in
taking
this case, you're wrong.
You're saying
no, because okay. So you're telling me that then they have, why isn't there 20 Operation Northwood ideas?
There may very well be. This is the one that got into the public domain.
Okay, let me give you an example of what I'm trying to say here, or what we're trying to say. So have you ever heard of something called Red Flag?
Yes, absolutely.
It's basically a military exercise that happens 4 times a year out of Nevada, out of Nellis Air Force Base.
I actually got a better one for you, but go ahead.
Yeah, and these exercises go on all over the world. They have one in Spain. They have one, in the Germany and Korea kind of area. They have them all over.
Essentially, they had it just before 9/11 with the same scenario.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they have these training exercises all the time. This is, and the idea behind it is to say, okay, if we're attacked, these are the way that we were going to do this. So you don't end up having people just flying around and not being organized. It's trying to get people organized. And these red flag kind of ones are so that all the people in this, all the allies or whatever you want to call it, they can work together. They use the same kind of language.
Yes, they all know where they'll be without having to see them.
Yeah, so, you can have, for example, the British have a reputation at low-level flying interdiction. That's one of our specialities. It has been for a long time. Now,
yeah, what is you guys have a special forces that's like unheard, like almost better than the Rangers, right? Or not Rangers.
Well, not the SAS. The SAS actually do classes for the SEALs as well. So.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at a report, I think they're almost like theoretically ranked above our Delta almost. I think our Delta is just more known.
Yeah. It's a bit, the problem is I try not to get into a sort of pecker waving contest of saying, yeah, our guys are better than yours. I tend not to do that.
Well,
at the end of the day,
no, time out. I've done some reading and report things. Your guys are pretty badass. Let's just keep it real. You guys are good.
You only have to watch the Iran embassy siege in 19 or something like that.
Seven. No, yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, that was crazy.
And these are hard guys. These are guys that will, basically slide around in the mud for 6 months at a time on, out in Kosovo or something. No one knows that they're there until they attack. Things like that. But also they've screwed up as well, So, sometimes things go wrong. But anyway, but what I'm trying to say is that these exercises, so red flag goes on, and effectively you've got the allies and you've got the reds. The reds are the bad guys, the blues are the good guys. And so what they do is they pit each against each other, and they try to, create a tactical exercise that resembles a reality.
Yeah, so they can fill the gaps in the problems that they have.
Yeah,
they can fix the gaps.
I read, I read a magazine which is here actually. It's the latest one this week. I read Air Forces Monthly, and pretty much in every single one of these, they talk about exercises going on. So, and the kind of thing. There you go. There's one. So these go on all the time. So the one that happened on 9/11, that was just a tactical training exercise, and
it was actually a month before 9/11. It didn't happen that day.
It did. It was planned to happen that day. And then 9/11 events happened, and that got put on hold.
No, it happened. Actually, they did that training exercise, and I believe it was in August.
Right. Maybe they've done a couple of them, and this was the latest one. I don't know. I do know that there was an exercise going on that day, because of course, early one
there was, but it wasn't the one that everyone, the conspiracy theorists like to tell you happened. Then it was the one that they simulated an aircraft coming in, a terrorist using a plane to hit a government installation. That one was actually in August. It was before. No, it was at least a month before.
You might be
9/11,
correct on
at
that.
least.
Okay.
Yeah, they were doing training missions, but I think they were
doing
using
a command and control air defense
Yes.
exercise at the time of 9/11, and
Yes.
you all seen the painted video where the colonel's asking, "Is this exercise a real world?"
Yes. It's different scenarios happen, but they use the one in August as the 9/11 one, but that was not the case. I don't believe that's what happened. I completely understand that there's no time that they will never have a defense system, period. I get there were so many, if anything, in that situation, it was the FAA that is to blame for the reason the jets never got a chance to do anything about it, but they were definitely ready to go. But just, where do you go if they don't tell you where to go?
Also, bear in mind, prior to this incident, no one's ever considered or seriously considered shooting down an airliner. In fact, the fighters that were actually launched that day were originally supposed to just to locate and escort. The shoot down order didn't actually come out, and unfortunately, it happened after all the airplanes were down.
Yeah,
That's we realized we were under attack, and I hate to think what was going through the pilot's mind, being an airman myself, is I suddenly get an order that I'm going to shoot down an airliner. There's going to be a couple
even worse.
There's going to be more than a few. There's going to be more than a few. Did I hear you right, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even think they got off the ground in time to. No, wait. They were off the ground when they got the order, but they hadn't found anything yet.
They
hadn't.
They took off out of Otis a couple minutes after the first tower got hit.
Yeah, that was the one. I forgot where it was now. It was like Massachusetts or something.
Okay.
Cape Cod.
Yeah, no, it was after the ones in New York. No, not New York. I'm sorry. That's the area. The ones in the Northeast. Yeah. They weren't able to take off because they didn't know the direction they were going, and weren't able to take off until after the second plane hit. The ones in Florida took off after the first one hit, but even they didn't know where to go.
Yeah,
I think your timeline's a little off there. And,
but regardless, it was FAA's not telling them where to go.
Well, funnily enough, that was one of the issues because the U.S. military effectively didn't have radar for internally. They had radar pointing outwards, but not internal. You know, that was the civilian air traffic controllers that had the radar for the internal U.S. Apparently, it's changed since then. So they both got access, but the military got access to CIA, the FAAs as well. Now, one of the things is they flew off, and the first thing they did, they head towards the sea because they didn't know where to send them. They didn't know where, what was going on, and they didn't, as Tom said, they didn't get told where to go until after the first the second plane had hit. I think it was. Yeah,
it was I know it was the second one because the ones that were close enough to be able to get contact, they just didn't have no one told them a location to go. They weren't able to.
And of course the reason for this is because they were still on a Cold War mentality of, if an attack is going to come to America, it's going to come from outside inward.
Yeah, I completely understand that.
So it was things have changed in that way. I know for I mean, in my opinion, 9/11 could never happen again, because think about it this way, before, if the crew and and the flight attendants would basically get people to do whatever they wanted, land the plane and then negotiate your freedom. And that's the way it would work. And the rules have changed now. So if you were in an aeroplane and some Muslim extremists took over the plane, would you sit in your seat? I wouldn't.
Absolutely not. No. And then even more than that, which is unfortunate, the pilots, that door is going to stay closed, and they're going to stay closed until they get to the airport, and then they'll have whatever agency to handle it, it will handle it, because now that is protocol. I mean,
Now, the
I
sad
mean,
part is, I've got a friend who has a much better idea of what they should do with that, and that is basically they've got a big red button in the plane, because they've got auto land system. You know, they can automatically land planes, and you know, the autopilot. You know, you could have a box that all it does is it says, "I'm going to send you to one of the nearest 10 airports."
Yeah,
A, B, C, emergency signal saying this plane has been hijacked, you know, beep, beep, beep on the radio. And the pilot can do nothing. He just sits there and you can stick a gun to him, you can kill him, whatever. He can't do anything to stop that plane. The only thing they could do is blow it up in the sky, and that's it.
Well, that's exactly what those systems are for that we were showing earlier. I think they also need some kind of a gas situation. Obviously not a deadly one, but I wouldn't mind a headache for 3 days if it meant it was going to knock us all out, and then we'd land at some random place and they take care of the hijackers.
Actually, you don't even have to do that. It's already installed. It's called the pressurization system. Engineering.
No, but then you got to risk. Or is there a way to do that, but not?
You can very easily turn the cabin pressure up to wherever you want it to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they
can that part. Okay. As soon as everybody passes out, you just tie them up and go down to head for the lower altitude.
Is that fast enough?
It's an option.
Okay. Yeah.
I think
it's better than not.
I think they've got something like 6 minutes of you know, when the things drop down. I think it's only 6 minutes, which should be enough to get you below 10,000 feet. Which
you guys are used to using. You got the solid chemical oxygen generators. I'm used to working with liquid oxygen.
Now,
okay, now we're getting way off. I'm sorry.
I just want to point something out as well. Do you know that I was a sort of a truther for a little while? You know,
I think anybody at some point should be.
Well, what happened was one of the reports that came out in the earliest days after Flight 93 crashed in the ground. So that was the one that didn't hit there was two that hit the buildings, one hit the Pentagon, and then another one crashed in the ground when the crew tried to take it over. And what happened was I looked and I saw, you know, a hole in the ground and some lumps, which were probably engines or something like that around. But there was a reporter who said that some light debris had been found. Some debris had been found 6.5 miles away, and I thought that plane has been shot down. Effectively, what my belief was at the time was that, okay, we've got another plane, it's heading in, we're going to shoot it down. You are now authorized to shoot that plane down, because we don't know what's going to happen with it. It could crash into the White House. It could crash into the Senate building. It could crash on a mall. It could crash on houses. We have no idea what's going to happen. Shoot it down while it's out in the country and it can't hurt anyone. And sorry, the 57 people on the plane or however many it was, they're going to have to die. Sorry, it's better that those people die than hundreds die. Or national monuments get destroyed. The morale hit for that would be enormous. So that kind of thing. And what happened was, what made me do it is because it was 6.5 miles away. Because what happens is, if a plane crashes in the ground, the debris is a localized area. But if it's shot down in the sky, it kind of like an umbrella. It kind of goes over a wider area.
Its force continues.
Yeah, but what happened was that when the plane exploded in the ground, bits of light debris were sent up in the sky, and there was an easterly wind. And what happened was that light debris ended up in the lake towards the sort of east-northeast direction. And some people who live on the opposite side of the lake, it's like a twisty, windy lake. Some people on the other side of the lake found this debris and reported it, and a reporter went out to do it. And she used MapQuest to figure out how far it was from where the plane had crashed, because she had to drive all the way around the lake to get there.
Yeah.
And the actual distance was about 3/4 of a mile.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, see, that was one of the situations that started me to look like, okay, what that's a plane that got shot down. But like you said, I really do strive to want to look into it. I want to know the three paths to why that answer got there. The problem with that was I am a conspiracy theorist. I do want to figure out if it is. By that time, MK Ultra, Mockingbird, all those things were already out there. So I didn't take what the media said as is. So that's why I was able to look into that and go, whoa. Let me see what's going on here. Because like you said, you can't find 2 or 3 pieces 6 miles away and go, it was shot down. You have to look at where the localized blast is, because it does, no matter what happens, each scenario has a pattern. And that pattern was literally right there. Yeah. What I figured would have happened was maybe, they got to the cockpit, and because it was such a fight that it was basically an instant straight down, and the forces broke something off, or you know what I mean? That's what I assumed happened. Yeah. I didn't actually put the wind and the blast into consideration. I took more of a violent what do you call it? Maneuver, basically, that was too much for a wingtip or something like that. Right. But by that time, I had already figured out where these jets were that are supposed to be doing that, and we found out that they were nowhere near it. And you can, and for me, I like
it was shot down.
Exactly.
Why keep it secret?
Exactly.
But there was another problem, which was the planes weren't armed. They didn't have any weapons on. They'd literally been sent off without any weapons on.
Actually, you're wrong on that one. They didn't have missiles, but they had their cannons.
Right.
Yes, okay.
All fighter planes normally carry ammunition for their cannons, basically as ballast.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're going to have armed. 20 millers will do a number.
And what you were saying before, where they're in their head, 9 times out of 10, what they're gonna be doing is, hey, we're here, turn around. Because I think they do that in certain situations when you get into an airspace. Like if I know if a passenger plane flies over, because I used to work as a civilian contractor on Camp Pendleton. I actually saw it a couple times. If a civilian airplane gets in the range, they send their Apaches up, and the Apaches, they will get into that battle ready, and hey, it's time to turn around. You get 2 warnings, and then we'll do it our way. And so I'm pretty sure they're always in that.
I think it could only be done on little private planes, not an airliner. Because even low speed, an airliner is going to be going faster than an Apache gunship.
No, I think wait. I don't know about Apache, but the thing on Pendleton, they have jets. They do. they're ready out there too.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, the rules have changed now.
Oh, now I don't. I think now I personally believe, I don't have documentation or real bias proof of it, but I believe that we have sites for air to ground now. Right, in different locations, rather than worrying about
maybe a possibility.
Yeah,
it seems it's more valuable. I think it is. I think you can.
We can get a discussion of that, because I mean, you can put as many fighters on alert anywhere you want, as long as you have a runway. So you put as many out as you need, and you don't have to worry about dropping a booster on the neighborhoods either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's also something you got to worry about. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I see with the kind of things you're going for is, because it's possible it could happen, it did happen, and that's causation. Correlation isn't causation. Having an Operation Norwood's plan doesn't mean to say that they had a plan or they carried out a plan.
You're right. But the problem is that if you look at the timeline from point A to today, you can't say no, that didn't happen when there is so many things that are so tightly tied together.
But they're only
like saying
tied together if you think they're tied together and you try to weave a pattern.
Oh, you're right. And there are things that
it was like I was trying to say about, you know, after it happened, and you've got authorities that have said this, and some guys have told the FBI or the cops or something that there's a guy that's a bit fishy, and they don't realize that that's a jigsaw puzzle until later. Effectively,
yes,
you're going on a jigsaw puzzle without a plan, and you think everything seems to be a jigsaw puzzle when it's actually happens to be a coincidental aspect of things.
But what I'm doing in that sense of it is I'm going along the edge. I have my edges. I know this is an edge, so I can put that edge. Okay, so to say,
let me just qualify the comment. What I mean is, how do you know that this is an edge? How do you know that this has something to do with something and it's connected to something else? How do you make this is a jigsaw piece, that's a jigsaw piece, and these pieces fit together? How do you bridge that?
Okay, so when I start, and we'll say before 9/11, we were talking, we've already discussed that part with we're figuring out weapons of mass destruction, oil, and all that stuff. You can't take that and go, that's it. So what happens is after 9/11 happens, the government instantly says Al-Qaeda. And then after Al-Qaeda, it's Iraq. Okay. Even though
I want to, because you're sort of jumping a number of ways. The first thing is that you've got this big national tragedy. Okay. There was already information coming out of, the Middle East and things like that stuff was going on. They already knew that there were things that were going to be happening.
As in the terror attack.
The USS Cole a couple of years before, that was an Al-Qaeda attack on America, in the Yemen. They were already doing things, and they'd already committed bombings in that part of the world as well. So there was already intelligence coming in. So when it happened, it's like, this is what this stuff that the CIA analysts, there weren't that many of them because they were still thinking about Russia and the Cold War type stuff. They were still in that mentality.
But there is no intelligence that said that we have never gotten anything that linked Saddam and Al-Qaeda together.
That's true.
Nothing.
Yeah, well, that's not quite true, actually.
No, it's 100% true.
What I mean is, it is true, but it's not. You haven't had information, because here's the problem. Do you remember I was saying about how the British kind of fed you information that was wrong? The reason was because we got it off Iraqi dissidents.
Exactly, and that. But see, the information we got off of them, the problem we got off of them was that I have it in notes. Basically, what they told us was that Saddam, or not Saddam, I'm sorry, Bin Laden was here. Oh, but now he's not here.
No.
That's exactly what happened, because what we were getting our information from Saudi Arabia that told us that he was in Afghanistan. We know he's in Afghanistan. That's where he's at. Yeah. We went to Afghanistan and we could not find him. And the whole time he was in Pakistan. Now, he never once had anything to do with Iraq.
I don't believe that's necessarily true. I know he was in what was the name of the place? The mountain. He was in that region, and then he escaped into Pakistan.
Yeah, but he did that. That interview was 299. I'm not 100% on the date, but we know for a fact when we decided that we were going to do the war on terror, he was already in Pakistan.
Okay, let's just say that's true, just for argument's sake.
Well, we know he was in Pakistan because we were watching that facility. Go ahead.
Well, the thing to bear in mind is that the Afghanistan was effectively revenge. Effectively, it's like, right, you guys have come after us, right? Now we're going to bomb your ass. And
we don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, Taliban. You don't want to give him up, right? We'll get you too. And that was basically what that was about. I know that
Afghanistan was almost more pointless than Iraq. The problem is that George Bush and Cheney and Rumsey, they used that terror attack to go to Iraq. That's what they said. That's what they said they were going for. Everything was about Saddam being involved with Al Qaeda, and we know for a fact now that was not true.
Well, we do know now, but we didn't know at
Nope.
the time.
See, okay, no, we as civilians didn't know that, but we have documentation that they knew he didn't.
Hang on, let me explain. So the Iraqi dissidents, okay, so they were given information saying he's got these weapons, and that they're linked with Al Qaeda in some way, but they weren't very precise about it.
No, they didn't exactly say if they were linked with Al Qaeda. It was more about, yeah, he has weapons of mass destruction, and there's a possibility he has something to do with the terror attacks. But the problem with that was at the same time, Saddam had already been, and not like he was before, he had already been saying, hey, I have no weapons of mass destruction. These are my, and we know this because he showed us 3 different facilities that we ever knew about and said, these are my real facilities where we are making our missiles, because we know he has missiles. That was nothing. It was more about the weapons of mass destruction. He said, these are my real facilities. Please come and look at them. Get off my back.
Yeah,
because he knew that if he didn't, at that point, we would go after him.
But the problem
was, it was no longer about oil then.
He wasn't being that open. I remember it at the time. I mean,
You're taking before the attacks and after attacks, and you're putting them together. Because before the 9/11, he was being like that.
In the run-up before the Iraq War started, okay, what happened was you had Hans Blix and the UN weapons inspectors. And the UN weapons inspectors were asking for more time. And, the coalition was looking to, they were biting at the bit, and they wanted to go into, war. Because, they'd had enough of that guy for years. Remember that they'd had no-fly zones, and, I mean, we called it Operation Telek. But, all those sorts of things going on for, since the first Gulf War.
So, but those were because of the threats he made against Iran, Kuwait. But the thing is because they knew, they even said it, they can't do something until they give him a reason.
That's right. And so what happened was...
but nothing linked him to the terror attacks.
I need to finish off, okay? So what happened was they had the intelligence coming from these dissidents. Now think about it this way. So what you've got Saddam saying to his neighbors, I've got these weapons, okay? You've got him saying to the West, no, I got rid of them years ago. At the same time as he's stopping Hans Blix from going in. He'd go in, and then a couple of days he would actually be allowed to go in, but they, and it's like, well, what are they doing? Are they hiding something? And there was a lot of, if you remember Rumsfeld saying known knowns and known unknowns and things like that. I mean, it was a silly way to describe it, but effectively there was a lot of fog going on, and you can't be sure whether he's got them. Let's go in and get them anyway, And so what happened was they believed the dissidents. I mean, this, effectively, this would be like going to Miami and talking to Cuban dissidents and listening to what they say as fact. And of course, remember, the dissidents have got a vested interest. They've been trying to get rid of Saddam for years, and now they're going to use their American, suckers. Effectively, they played them for fools. And so, it's like, yeah, we're gonna get you to do it for us. Fantastic. And so they played up this report, and it came, it got to the British, and the British looked at it, and they some bit, because of course in all these things, all the best lies have an aspect of truth in them. So the fact that he was being caught, Saddam was being coy and saying, oh, I'm not going to let you in. And then a couple of days later, after more, after threats and things like that, he finally does. But there's been trucks moving around and stuff like that. And, and it's like, yeah, so effectively he was playing poker, and he was, hiding his cards, and you couldn't really tell what he's got, but you got an idea. And what happens is they go in on false evidence, and they realize, oh shit, he didn't have them.
Okay, but here's the problem. You can go to the NIS, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the NIS, and you can go through their archives. They have the phone recordings, not the recordings, but the phone transcripts, and the memos, basically, of everything from after 9/11 with Saddam Hussein. From the from basically September 12th till the day we found out he was in hiding. He had been reaching out to our inspectors to come in there and look at these facilities that he really does produce stuff in, not weapons of mass destruction, normal weapons, and come inspect these because I don't have anything. Because, and in the memos, he even states, I understand the emotions you are having now, and I do not want to be caught in the middle of it. Those were his exact words in a memo to the NSA, or the NIS. So he goes, come. That the only time in all these years that America did not want to talk to him was the 3 weeks prior to their attack. They did not send one inspector there. They did not respond to him one time. And all the times he had made it clear, come on in, ha ha ha, go to that place, not there, ha ha, telling everyone. He stopped that completely for 3 years. He stopped acting that way.
No, he
didn't even say anything.
He was doing it like matter of months. You know, before.
No, that after.
I remember watching this.
No, okay, no, you're right.
No,
you're right. The only time he started back up when we said Iraq is when Bush came out and said Iraq is involved with Al Qaeda. They're the source of the money. That was the only time he went, oh, okay, well, I guess all bets are off. I guess you're not coming to inspect anything. Let's get my army back together. That was the one time after all this come and get and inspect everything, he did. And that's natural. What are you going to do when once someone says, we're not negotiating anymore, we're coming in? The problem is that from day one, they said Bin Laden and they said Saddam, Iraq, from day one. And we know Saddam had nothing to do with it.
Well,
since day one.
I know that came later. But they've been wanting to go after Iraq for years. I mean, you know,
exactly.
Bush,
and that's
Bush and Cheney.
That's what I'm saying.
Because you know, it was
oil.
Well, no. Look. The oil makes going in for the oil is a stupid one to use, because if it was for that, America would have got the oil contracts, but it didn't. It went to the French and the Chinese.
And the Chinese, we have, and the Chinese, we have, but the thing is the Chinese, we have tens of billions of dollars in negotiating extensions with them now for those refineries. I mean, they're all documents. They do everything. You can go look. That's what I'm saying. Just because we didn't go there and go, these are our refineries now. If they did that, it becomes too obvious. Now, you're making it seem like they had to go, hey guys, we want that oil. We have to have something happen so we can get to that oil. And then they went, okay, put this guy, and this guy on a plane, and let's blow that building up so we can get in there. No, I don't think they did that. They became opportunists. And as far as anybody is concerned, that is a false flag regardless, because at the same time, they said, we could never imagine, this is under oath, we could never have imagined that a plane would ever hit a building. They said that. They said, we know Saddam had nothing to do with the terror attacks. This is in the 9/11, the 9/11 report. This is why I asked that question, because the problem is in the 9/11 report, it states, so-and-so said this, we know that was a lie. So-and-so said this, we know it's a lie. The fact that that is happening is a false flag. A false flag does not have to be 100% collusion against their own to do something. All it needs to be is an opportunity with lies. And that's the whole situation was wrapped with lies to be able to be focused to go to Iraq. Because if it wasn't, they would not have gone to Iraq because they had no reason to. They would have gone to Afghanistan, and that is it. They would have gone to Afghanistan and poked around Pakistan a little bit, because that's the real intelligence that they did have. A false flag does not have to be, this is what we're going to do to get in there. It happened. We had this drawn up. We knew we have everything set up to go there because we wanted to. Opportunity arises. Let's go. The fact that they blamed it on him, the fact that George Bush came out and said, we know Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, knowing they didn't. We know he had something to do with terror attacks.
This is the thing. They didn't know he didn't.
No, they did.
They did, because there was, there was evidence from these dissidents that he had them, and he was being, being shifted with the weapons and
zero evidence. Zero. The 9/11 report even says zero evidence. It was all word of mouth.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Even if it's
not evidence.
Word of mouth, that doesn't mean to say that.
That's not okay. But when you talk about going to war, that is not reason for war.
No.
Because just them saying that the dissidents saying that, it's not reason to go to war. There's no country in the world that can say that's reason.
I mean, I was,
so
when this was going on, I was saying to my TV when I was listening to the report, saying, just wait a few weeks, for crying out loud. Wait until Hendricks has done the looked in and made a decision, because they went in
the problem.
Made the decision.
They made the biggest mistake they made is in my opinion, Cheney telling Bush to say it's there. Because Bush came out and said, we know he has weapons of mass destruction. We know he funded Al-Qaeda with zero backing.
Well, I mean, one of the things that was in the 9/11 report was that there had been links with the Iraqi government officials with Al-Qaeda.
But the thing is, those were the dissidents. Those were the same guys. Because we were also working with Russian spies that were telling us before the attacks there's no weapons of mass destruction there. But at the same time, I can't say that they're going to take their word for 100%. But these are the things we knew they weren't there.
Well, they didn't have evidence that Saddam was assisting Al Qaeda for 9/11.
They had zero
evidence of exactly. They didn't have evidence for that.
The only evidence on that situation is they had Saddam saying, Saddam has been before even the restrictions and the wanting to inspect. Saddam has always said that terror was his worst enemy, because if they attacked him and they took his and got anywhere near his regime like that then it would implode. So we know for a fact he wanted nothing to do with bin Laden at all. You can even go back and look at all these documentaries that are for the United States going to war, and they don't re-edit these things, and they make it still like Saddam had something to do with it. The point is Saddam had nothing to do with it, and the real reasons that they had, or real evidence they had to go to war with Iraq, was not enough. It wasn't enough to go to war. And they don't have to convince us. They have to convince the UN, and in a sense, they have to
nations that we're going to join the coalition. Yeah.
Okay. So to use Saddam, but to use Saddam to say he has something to do with the terror attacks, to be able to sway the opinions, is a false flag.
But no, because like I said, they had evidence from these dissidents. The problem is, how did
we already decided
verify it? They couldn't really verify it, and so effectively, we went into war under a false pretense. That doesn't being wrong. Hang on, being wrong doesn't mean conspiracy.
Okay, if they went to the Supreme Court and said, or UN, whoever the powers that be that says, okay, we understand. You're telling me that these dissidents told us this gave them justification to go to war?
Well, they had a dossier on it. Of course, it was now called the dodgy dossier in my country, at least. The information was factually wrong. And it's recognized as being factually wrong. Like I say,
okay,
I'm not going against you on the information was bogus and we went to war on a false pretense. We agree on that. But that is the false flag. Well, other than, we can make some money out of the situation, which is a different story completely. You know, that doesn't mean, you know, there's a collusion to start a war so we can make money. That's, you know, having that as a byproduct.
About money.
But the real result was we're going to go and, you know, get rid of these countries that are, you know, on the axis of evil group. So, you know, Libya, Syria, Iraq, North Korea.
Problem with that.
Yemen,
Iraq,
one of them.
Okay. Well, we can all obviously see it now, but we even knew then. Saddam was what kept it together. Saddam was what made it not the wild, wild west. And we knew that. We thought that we were going to be so badass that we were going to go out there, take him out, and be able to control this wild, wild west. And we weren't.
Oh, no. That was a different thing completely. Effectively, what happened was the military went out. And, of course, the army are fantastic at blowing things up and killing people. They're great at doing that. That's what they train for. But what they're not very good at doing is peacekeeping and policing. And so what happened was, you know, so what happened was the power vacuum happened, and the troops were just standing around, and you've got videos of people looting museums and people's homes, and what's it? You know, Saddam's palaces and things like that. You know, it was loot.
Well, the realization is.
And then what happened? Hang on. And then what happened was they had their little coalitions of together. So the old tribal warlord mentality stuck back in, and so you've then got Sadr, you know, Muqtada al-Sadr and things like that. You know, these warlords.
We're not peacekeepers
in different areas, and then there was the insurgency stuff going on as a result.
But because we're not peacekeepers. I don't think there's ever been a time when we've been able to be peacekeepers. We don't govern very well. Our armies don't govern very well.
I'm going to sound like I'm being a bit shitty to Americans here. We did pretty well in Iraq. We lost a lot of people, but you know, when it came to average people, you know, we had berets on. We didn't have flak armor on. You know, they might have body armor on, but they went with berets and you know, things like that. It was a heart symbol.
And the reason I believe that is, and you're right, you're 100% right. You can't say anything about it. And I also think the separation of distance in countries, I think that's had a lot to do with that. I think our military and our powers that be went, that we're there and we get to go home when this is done. Realistically, you guys really have to go. We're still in the middle of this shit. We can't go around being assholes. And let's be the realization. They're all for the people, but there always are those bad apples. And those bad apples.
It's not just that though. And I really hate to diss on Americans because I really like Americans.
Or better yet,
I've found that Americans are kind of stupid sometimes. It's not, sorry, that's not quite the word. Naive. I think, you know, internationally naive. Because the thing about it, in my country, I know what's going on in most of the world. I mean, I don't know how much, you know, there's been that thing going on in Burma. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Going on?
Yeah.
Now, that's something that most Americans probably have no idea what's going on there.
Oh, yeah. And when it comes to that, they have figured out how to dumb a lot of people down. Most people don't look into anything.
No. And this is a kind of a part of the problem that, I mean, the first time I went to America, one of my friends joked to me, one of my British friends, they said, pick up a newspaper and watch your country disappear. You know, and it's true, you know, you would pick up a newspaper and it'd be American news. And it wouldn't, the only thing you'd get about, you know, Britain or something like that was on the back page where at the stock market or something.
Yes.
So, you know, it's not that, you know, like I say, I found Americans aren't necessarily stupid. You know, there are some that are really stupid, but there are many that are just naive. They don't understand what goes on in the rest of the world. You know, where
I really think it's because you guys are there.
Well, a part of it is geography. You know.
Yes, 100. Yeah.
If you're American and you want to go on a hot holiday, you go to Florida. If you want to go cold weather, you go to, you know, Aspen, Colorado or something. You know, you can do everything in one country. And you don't have to go to another country where they don't speak English. You know. Well,
exactly. Put it this way. When we first started, we were talking about NORAD. The three of us completely understood where NORAD's head is and capabilities are.
Yeah.
But I can tell you now, 99.7% of America assumes there's 30 jets on each coast going, let's go. And think rationally, you got to realize it doesn't work that way, period. Now, for you guys, when your enemy is within walking distance, because you can't walk here from Iraq or Afghanistan. You're there. You guys share a backyard. You have to be more vigilant. You have to be more aware.
The thing is, we're an island as well. We're a small island, so we don't really have that. But
an ocean is different.
Well, the main thing is, because we're close and we're part of Europe, at least for the moment, effectively, we get to know what's going on in France and Spain and things like that. I mean, have you heard what's going on in Spain?
No, actually, I have not. I may have, but not.
Effectively, they've got a part of Spain, the Catalanate region, who are trying to secede from Spain, and the Spanish.
Okay, yeah.
No, you don't.
Well, isn't that I know about it. Not to the point where the reasons behind it, but I know when Brexit happened
days ago, they they pledged independence. They claimed.
Okay, no, I didn't. I know they were talking about it. I didn't know it had actually happened. Okay, you're right. Though, yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is that we get news from around the world, and it's effectively the most important one. I mean, the first thing on the news tonight was about the the thing that happened in New York. That was the first thing. That was the top of the news. And the next thing was, about, ministers maybe, feeling people up in, abuse of power kind of stuff, sexual.
Wait.
So,
say it again?
We have a bit of a problem with politicians.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay,
abusing their power in touching up young women or even boys. Young lads, interns.
But see,
like that. Effectively, I think Monica Lewinsky, except for trying it on.
But as a question, because I don't know, do you guys consider the Vatican and your religious sectors in government as one?
Religion is a little weird in the UK. It's a little bit complicated, but effectively, the national attitude to religion is, if you believe in God, fine. If you don't believe in God, fine. As long as you're not in people's face about it, people don't really care. About 5% of people go to church in the UK. 5%. Okay. We got 63 million people in my country. So hardly anybody goes to church at all.
Yeah.
Closed. There's a church down the road from me that's a pizza restaurant now.
Yeah. I see.
Things like that.
That's odd to me, because here, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would say we have more of a population that does go.
Yeah.
But your country is more backed by religion.
Well,
not backed, more based in religion, basically.
Kind of getting off the subject a bit on the 9/11 stuff.
Oh, 100%. You're right. Well, I'm sorry.
The short thing. Effectively, it goes back a long way. It goes back to Henry VIII. And Henry VIII decided he was going to have his own church because he didn't want to be told by the Pope how many wives he could have, or that he could. Yeah. He wanted to get a divorce and get another wife because he didn't like her anymore. And the Pope said, "No, you can't." And he said, "Well, fuck you. I'm the king of my own country. I'm just going to create my own church then." And that was how we ended up with the Church of England, which is a form of Protestant. It's Anglican, but it's Protestantish. And ironically, it's coming up in a couple of days. But, the King James Bible is interlinked with this feud that they had in Britain, because the royalty was fighting between Catholicism and Protestant for 100 years or whatever, and more. And November the 5th, we have bonfire night where they got fireworks going on. It's kind of like a non-patriotic or semi-patriotic 4th of July kind of thing. People like fireworks and barbecues and stuff like that. It's but basically what happened was in 1605. Remember what's it? The King James Bible started in 1601, 1604. Sorry, finished 1611. And prior to that, they'd been the Common Prayer Book, which was, we don't need, priests, and we want it done in English and things like that, so people can understand instead of being, Roman, Latin, few people understand, and most people couldn't read anyway.
Yeah.
And so what happened was there was a Catholic plot to blow up the king in Parliament and have a coup and take over the country and put a princess on the throne, a Catholic princess on the throne. It failed. They were hung, drawn, and quartered, and heads stuck on, what's it? And every year we have fireworks and we have bonfires, and sometimes they do effigies of Guy Fawkes and that kind of stuff. I mean, if you think Guy Fawkes, that's the mask that people wear and things like that. It's all embedded in the culture.
It's almost the beginning of Freemasonry, really.
Yeah, just to give you an example of how hardline it was, until a few years ago, if one of the royal kids married a Catholic, they would no longer be eligible for the throne.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how bigoted the culture goes back. Yeah,
that's the Romeo and Juliet story.
Yeah. Now, a bit like America, where you've got the House and the Senate, we've got the House of Commons, which is the Prime Minister and her party, and then you've got. We're getting way off subject, but unlike America, where you've got two,
separate.
What I mean is, you've got two parties.
Church and state.
We've got several.
Oh.
And what happens is you have a leader of the party, and sometimes they have a little vote within their party, and they change leaders and things like that. David Cameron was the Prime Minister of the government, and what happened was Brexit happened. He was going against Brexit, and so it was like, I can't really justify, taking a position on Brexit when I voted against it. So he resigned as Prime Minister, and they had a little election within their party, and Theresa May is now the leader of that party. And then they had, they've had election recently, and she is leading that party, so she's the Prime Minister. And it even goes down to, so you've got the House of Commons, which is why I vote for my local MP. They go to the House of Commons. They, discuss a law that they want to bring in, and then it goes to the House of Lords, and the House of Lords say, yes or no, and, sometimes they say, no, that's not good enough. They send it back, and so they have to tweak it a little bit and try again, and then, yes, they get through, and then it becomes a law. Short version. Yeah. But the House of Lords has, I think it's 4 bishops or something like that in the House of Lords. They're the Anglican Church, and, they are in the House of Lords, so that the religion aspect, because the Queen is the head of the faith. We have a national religion, but the amusing thing about it is that every year we have the state opening of Parliament, and so they have, the Queen wears a crown and all that kind of stuff, and put her in a carriage, and she rides down the mall with the guard, the horse guards and all that kind of stuff, and then she goes into the House of Lords where the throne is. And Lord Blackrod, which is like her official, he goes up to the House of Commons across the other side of the hall, because it's like 2 halves. So he goes across, and he, way back in the past, when they were trying to make Parliament, instead of the king being in charge of the country and his decisions, make it the people make the decisions through Parliament. So it's a constitutional monarchy. And so what happens is he walks across, and he's there with his stick, and they slam the doors in his face, because it's like, no, we're not going to let you in. And then he bangs on the door 3 times, I think it is, and the doors open, and he says, Your Her Majesty the Queen demands your appearance. And so they all line up, and they follow up, and they try and cram in this little room, and basically the Queen then gives her speech and says, my government will do this, that, and the other. The amusing thing is, about 4 days before, the government send a letter to the Queen saying, this is what we want you to say. Seriously, that's how
now, but before it wasn't like that, right?
before the king basically said, you know what, my opinion is
Yeah.
to do this, and so they got the, that's what happened largely, But
Yeah.
the problem is it was an abuse of power problem, and then that's how we ended up with a constitutional monarchy. I've explained a lot of English history, about 500 years worth, in about 5 minutes, but it's way off subject.
But see,
I remember how
the issue with the subject is, the better understanding is I need to know what you consider what.
Sorry, you broke up. Do you want to say that one again, please?
What do you consider a false flag?
A deliberate attempt to achieve a goal by false means.
So they didn't deliberately say Saddam was involved for a reason?
I think it was more they wanted to go after him. They needed a justification, and the dissidents basically gave them the information that they could to do it.
But they didn't go. They didn't when they went and said, "This is why we want to go to war." These defectors told us this wasn't why were given the okay, why they went for it. That's impossible. Otherwise, they would have said, "Hey, these guys said it. That's why."
But that's what they did. That's where the intelligence come from.
No.
That dossier that the British handed over to Colin Powell, who read and said about these trucks and things like that. That was information that came from the British. And that had been collated from a few different sources, but largely it was based upon faulty evidence from, and when I say evidence, they thought it was evidence. They thought it was something real. And of course, like I say, I'm not suggesting that they went to war correctly. What I'm basically saying is that they wanted to go after Saddam because he was a tyrant, and they'd been, stopping him, having a no-fly zone and things like that. But he was still doing this thing where it looked like he was hiding weapons because he wasn't allowing the weapons inspectors to inspect all the time. Sometimes
the thing is
coming in and they'd show and they'd look at paperwork and stuff like that. And other times it's like, no, you're not allowed in. And they end up leaving.
Okay, but we can
protesting and contacting Saddam and saying, look, your people are not allowing us in. You need to do this. Otherwise it's going to, it's not going to be good. And so, I mean, if you remember, do you remember Team America World Police?
Yes.
Okay, and there's a bit like, you're busting my balls, hands, or something like that. And it's like, you will do this. And if you don't, we will write a letter to you. It was kind of like that. That was making fun of that situation. So,
but
like
we know,
but
we know realistically, there's a certain point that you have to get to before war is justified. They didn't have that justification regardless. Saddam knew, because obviously he's a leader, he knows where that line is, and he made sure not to cross that line. Now, for America to falsify that line is a false flag. Anytime, any collusion, any falsification to do something is a false flag.
I don't think it's quite that simple. You're looking at it incredibly simplistic in that regard.
You're giving a false flag a rating, and you can't do that because if you there's things that I haven't even brought up because I don't feel need to prove it's a false flag.
Okay.
Because I could go into America Airlines. I mean, somehow within days the stock market just plummeted, but 5 of their shareholders happen to have sold before. But that's straw manning. That's pulling too hard. But that's the same thing you're doing. Those 4 guys that told him that Saddam had something to do with that terror attack is not enough. And they knew it wasn't enough because if it was, they could have been saying you can look at all the reports that we get reports now that Pakistan hates us and they'd bomb us if they had the chance. But there's not enough for us to even care. There's not enough to believe it. So that's why we've never thought about going to war.
There's a bit of a difference with Pakistan, though, because effectively you've got parts of Pakistan that are more, like the East Pakistan, where it's bordering, towards Afghanistan. They are more on the Al Qaeda side of things.
Yeah,
we
found out that
they're more the religious zealot types.
Yeah,
and then
that's what we found out.
Government, which may have a few people that maybe have that mindset, but effectively, the thing you have to remember is, right now, for example, there's a whole bunch of air forces in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, a bunch of air forces are in that area, and they're all basically rearming. They're buying new fighter planes and things like that because they're worried that they're a little bit outdated, and it's about time that we got some new stuff, new abilities, because we're a bit worried about like these Al Qaeda and ISIS types. What happens?
We realize that they are capable.
Because, well, at the end of the day, they want to protect what they've got. The kings. You have to go back to 1979 when the Shah of Iran was deposed, and you ended up with Iran, the Republic of Iran now, the Islamic Republic of Iran. So, effectively, they're worried about that kind of thing because they are the equivalent of a Shah. So they need to
even more
power. And so
even more than that,
kind of works in place.
Underestimated.
Sorry?
We always felt, even then, that they may fight well, but they'll never unify, and we weren't ready for that. I think the fear now is so real because now we know, regardless of their income, of their worldly status and power, they are something to worry about. Because what they're not reporting, they have tanks. They don't have the technology of weapons that we do.
Oh,
but they have more than enough. No. Well,
they just.
I know for a fact.
To punch.
Based on. Yeah, but I know for a fact, based on guys telling me that probably shouldn't have. Your technology, because we're basically. I know a lot of you guys hate it, but technology-wise, we're the same. The government is 10 to 15 years ahead of what we see, what they show us.
No, they're actually quite open with what we've got. I mean, there's
but that's the problem, because they're even beyond that, because they've had stealth ships since the early 80s.
Yeah,
but they didn't come out with it until the late 90s.
I'm not sure about ships. I certainly know airplanes. I mean, it's even the technology for that isn't that unknown. I mean, I don't know if you know stealth planes and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But effectively, they use little tiny balls, magnetic balls, and they paint it on effectively in a special form.
Yeah.
And it's I think it was I forgot what the metal was now. But it's just these little tiny balls of magnetized, whatever it's called. And that's what gives it its stealthiness, and of course they've got the angular shapes and things like that. So that's the radar absorbency element to it.
But then they also have cloaking. They're out with cloaking now. They are open about their cloaking capabilities. That's been around for a lot longer than 3 years now. I'm smiling because I just remembered something which was Trump said a few weeks ago that the stealth planes, the F-35, you can't see it. You actually can't see it. It's like he thinks they're invisible. You can't see it on radar, which actually isn't true either. It's just got a very low cross section. Well, that's what I remember when the stealth bomber came out.
Oh yeah.
in Vegas or Nevada, Nevada statewide, they were getting 1,000 police calls a night of UFOs. To come to find out when they released it, that's what they were seeing.
Yeah.
So I mean, anybody can go anywhere with it if they don't know.
I mean, do you remember at the time there were the kind of, they were saying that they were triangle shaped.
Yes.
Well, of course, when you see the navigational lights on the side and another one at the on the front, which is possibly landing gear or something, kind of fits that kind of shape. It's just the middle bit, the Batman tail bar.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you're coming off of F-14, even a F-15 had a jet look. So I mean, that's why the Raptor isn't this like outrageous looking machine anymore, because now we've seen that they're not going to look like that Tomcat in Top Gun.
I've actually got a Raptor just over
there. Those were probably the first ones where I went, okay, yeah, now they're. Imagine what they really have, because that was like the revolutionary one.
Yeah.
Because we thought the hovering ones. What do you call the ones that hover?
What, helicopters?
No, the jets.
Oh, the Harrier.
Something simple too.
The Harrier.
Harriers, yes.
Yeah.
Harriers. When those first came around, people were like, okay, war has changed completely, and those are nothing compared to a lot of the things we have now.
Well, I mean, now we've got a hovering version of the F-35. The F-35.
Really? I had no clue about that.
The F-35 is basically a slightly smaller version of a Raptor, but it's got a single-engine aircraft, and there are three versions of it. There's the F-35A, which is the Air Force one, so lands on a normal runway and so on. The F-35B, which is the Marines version. Effectively, it's a Harrier, a modern Harrier. So it's a stealthy Harrier. A couple of advantages of it. The Harrier used to carry loads of water to cool it down when it was hovering, whereas they don't worry about that now. So because it'll just sit there hovering all day as long as it's got fuel in it. And then you got the C, which is the US Navy version, which is a cat and trap. So it's got stronger undercarriage. And it's got a tail hook and everything, so it's designed to be the Tomcat, Hornet, F-35 is the future version. So I'm pretty aware of stuff like that. There's another factor as well, that the F-35 is not the same as the Raptor in terms of what it does, because the Raptor is an anti-air, is an air superiority fighter. It's a modern F-15. Although the F-15 has multi-usage. The F-35 is a strike fighter. So the idea is it goes in, it drops a bomb at a specific point, and then it flies back.
Well, is that in terms of because of we being in Afghanistan? It's more of an
effectively, this stuff comes out from the Cold War times. It's like, okay, we need an F-15 replacement, and they don't start designing these things for a long time. It takes them a while to work out what it is that they want and what the specifications are going to be and what it needs to be. And then they start doing the design process and figuring out, the elements to go around it. So,
well, the scary part to me is I'm pretty sure they're starting to do jet drones now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what started me onto that flight thing. It was because it was we have drones. What are they doing next? And the only rational thing to do is make them faster. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the problem is faster is a bit of a problem. I mean, the F-35 is, that is, although it can go supersonic, I think, I don't think it does supersonic that much, because the idea is that supersonic leaves a massive booming trace that you can follow, whereas flying supersonic, doesn't. So it's
not effective in war.
Yeah,
to do that.
The problem is that, like I say, it's the F-35 is kind of like I can't really call it now. I forgot. It's not a specialist in anything, but it kind of can do everything. But which means it doesn't do anything brilliantly, but as an overall, idea, it does the general what everybody wants it to do anyway, which is fly over, drop bombs, and fly back.
Get home. Yeah. Okay.
As a fighter, as in one plane shooting another one down, it's not as good as other aircraft. But again,
it's not nimble.
But again, the beauty of it is it's got that stealthy characteristic, which means it's harder to be able to lock on to. But
but
the difficult.
Then at that point, aren't they just going to make? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that effectively, as one, it's like an arms race kind of thing. One goes up, then another one goes a little bit further, and a little bit further, and so on. So it keeps pushing that envelope. And so, as you've got stealthy planes now, you've now got ground-based anti-air, systems, which are designed to follow, to track, stealthy aircraft. Because effectively, it's a bit like, the best way I can describe it is imagine the volume control. And we're having a conversation, and that's fine, and you can have that at 2. But suddenly I start talking really, really quietly. You might have to turn it up a little bit. And so the radar cross section used to be fair. Big plane shows up, really bold on the dot, and the dot moving on the radar screen, and a small plane is a smaller dot because it's got a smaller cross section. And then now you've got stealthy planes, which have an even smaller one again. So now instead of having, systems where you're looking for, a plane that's the size of the plane, you're now trying to look at something that's the size of a seagull.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, the main difference is that seagulls don't fly at 1,000 miles an hour or, at 30,000 feet. So that's what they look for. I know it's a very simplistic way. It's a little more complicated than that. Yeah. That's the best analogy I can think of.
Well, the goal is to pass off the least amount of heat signature you possibly can, really.
It's more radar signature.
That's old. That's old technology, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that heat detection is going to become more useful because, but it's going to have to be done in a train system so that if you imagine there's a plane flying this way, a detector here can pick it up and say to the one over here that there's a heat signature coming your way.
Yeah, okay. Calculate, yeah.
So
the telemetry.
Yeah, so, it's a long kind of winded thing. But the main thing about it is that there's been a massive change because the amount of F-35 that are going to be built is going to be, it's going to be tiny compared to F-16s and F-15s and similar aircraft, And the reason is because we're much better at, getting things precision. So, for example, World War II, they'd send 100 bombers to bomb, a 25-mile range area, just carpet bombing. In Vietnam, they were a little more precise, but you still had, maybe 200 feet, plus minus to hit the target. And you were dropping a lot of bombs instead of, a few. So they were dropping half a dozen bombs and, that would get them. And then, but now you can drop one bomb on one target. So you're not having to waste, 3 aircraft to do one target. Now you've got one plane and one target. And of course, they're able to use drones and just be orbiting and, watching, the Reapers and so on. They can monitor. It's called ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance. That's the main thing that is in demand nowadays. And that's what these drones do. So they can either just monitor what's going on and saying, yeah, we've got some guys in some trucks and they're armed and things like that, and then you send in your plane and drop a bomb on it. And that's how you get rid of your insurgents and, your Al-Qaeda or whatever. This is how it's done very well against ISIS. But there is one problem that's been happening. And that is that there's, bombs have got bigger and better. And unfortunately, dropping a 500-pound bomb or a 1,000-pound bomb or a 2,000-pound bomb, they kind of go outward and expand, and so you can't sort of drop a bomb next to a school, because next thing you know, you've got lots of people in the school getting killed as well, and that doesn't look very good on the news. So
the problem with that is that where our technology is getting smarter, and it sucks to say, we as the users of this technology are getting stupider, because someone who can play Call of Duty is 100% the same person that is flying those drones right now. And and in their brain, whether they realize it or not, they're turning the switch off.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been like that to a certain extent in air forces, because.
But remember, back in the day, World War II.
Yeah, well, unlike
World War II,
even in World War II, I've my favorite aircraft of World War II is the Beaufighter, which was it did not multiple jobs, but it did anti-shipping, it did night fighting, and there's a book called Night Fighter by C.F. Rawnsley, and the guy who flew the plane, because he was the radar controller guy in the back, and it was one of the first planes with air radar.
Okay.
And they would just talk about trade. So other pilots in other planes, that was just trade. That was just they're the bad guys and we shoot them. But they didn't treat them as people. It was just a plane. But
even then, you see, it's kind of hard. I have the idea of it because I don't know the stories behind the guys really, and the real fighters that were doing it. You get the depictions of the movies, and the earlier ones, World War I, II, you always have that moment where they're like, do we want to be doing this? But now you have these movies where that's not even in the narrative.
Well, they just rationalize it, don't they? Of course, they're the bad guys.
Yeah,
you don't want to hit innocent civilians, but you do want to get the bad guys. Now, our military will tell us that they don't get civilians, and it's not true.
Yeah.
There's collateral damage. They don't want to do it. They don't aim to do it, but sometimes it happens.
You have to assume during war. The reason we are so upset about it is, I can't even say you guys, because like I said, you guys are in that backyard. But for us, it's the idea of a war ever being here like that, where every day you're worried, it's impossible for us to have that imagination.
Well, it's the same for me. I mean, I once had a pensioner who was around in World War II. He's dead now. And he said that you have it so good because you don't even have to think about your nation being, taken over.
A full bombardier run. Yeah, we have no clue what it was like. Yeah.
No, I mean, I bet the only people that do are probably the press when they're out on the front line. Maybe with the Kurds or something like that, and a bomb lands on them accidentally because they, There was a famous one during the Iraq War, second Iraq War, the more recent one, and where it was a BBC journalist.
With the kids.
No, he was around with the Kurds, and what happened was he was in a bunch of vehicles on a crossroads, and what happened was that they basically said, "Yeah, we got some guys, and they're on a crossroads," and unfortunately, the U.S. Navy F-14 Tomcat dropped the bomb on the wrong set of vehicles on a crossroads, which was their own people. It was a friendly fire incident.
Okay, I think was it. Okay, no, I'm thinking of a different one. There was another story where it was a woman reporter, and no, because they got a rocket fired upon. Okay, completely different story, but because the ones you're hearing about are the reporters rather than everyone else. And personally, I don't think it's smart to do all that. It seems a little much, personally.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got a weapon, European weapon, but we use it predominantly in against ISIS and so on, and it's called the dual mode brimstone. And it's a low yield device. It's not very powerful. I think it's about 250 pounds or something. It's not a very big bomb at all, but it's got a shaped charge, so it doesn't explode wide. It's very focused, and so you can now drop that bomb on the insurgents next to the school without killing the people in the school. You know,
and then we're coming with Moab.
It's because dead kids on TV isn't very good press, and so you know, let's have a weapon that doesn't do that.
Yeah, because your press, I believe, is a little more honest than ours.
Yeah, well, we have laws.
Okay.
As a part of their charter, they're not allowed to tell lies, things that they know are not true. They're not allowed.
Because our government tells our reporters what to lie about.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's weird watching the American news because effectively it's, you know, you've got Fox, which is the Republican propaganda channel, and CNN stroke MSNBC, which are the Democratic propaganda channel.
Yeah, that's what we have. 10 big news organizations owned by 2 people. Basically, and that's how it is. I mean, the fact that we know it is now, YouTube, Facebook, these are now our media sources.
Yeah, I actually think Twitter is one of them as well.
Yes.
And here's the thing: there's an amusing thing. You remember the old 1984 Orwell thing? You know, about Big Brother.
Yes.
It is the exact opposite now.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a white cop shoots a black kid, and there's 15 people with their mobile phones.
Yep.
And 20 seconds later, that video can be on Twitter.
Even faster.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, you can go live now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
crazy.
You know, and this is why you've got black people taking the knee and stuff like that, because this information is able to be disseminated very quickly.
See, now
and the press aren't in control of it
at all. But here's my fear, and you're starting to see it with the bigger YouTubers that were outing CNNs and all those. I mean, they're not doing it, but you can see them becoming the big news source. At what point do they start bending the narrative for them?
Yeah,
that's the scary part. Because once that's done, what happens?
The problem is that effectively arguments can be spread very quickly, and on TST tonight we kind of mentioned this. That effectively, and did you say you're into flat Earth?
Yes, I am a flat earther.
You know, now until fairly recently, you would never know of another flat earther.
Oh, I've only been here for 6 months. I've been flat earther for 6 months.
I don't mean that kind of recent. I mean since the internet came around, and you know.
Oh, okay.
Until the AOL generation got on the internet.
Not as
effectively roughly the turn of the century.
Yeah,
you know?
You're right. Yeah,
maybe a bit earlier, but roughly the turn of the century. So effectively, before. I mean, I'm going to call you an idiot, and I don't mean I don't mean you are an idiot. I'm saying sort of I think the idea is idiotic. Okay, so all with idiotic ideas are able to find other people that have the same idiotic ideas, and they club up, and you end up with a community.
Okay, but the problem with that is it's your your ideas that make that seem stupid, but at the same time, for someone like, see, you're obviously a lot more level-headed, and I know this is your guys' community. The way Steve acted about this, to me, was the same idiotic that you feel about flat Earth. How do you censor a debate community? The realization
it was a little odd. I admit that. I even commented.
But the realization I was his entertainment. But what he didn't expect is that I think I have a brain, and I personally would rather say I'm a flat earther, and if you have experience at something and you can give me some knowledge, I'll take it in. There are others that don't do that, and that's what I think he counted on. It didn't offend me as much as I said, damn, that sucks for all that community whose spokesman is telling this person, and it's not, I don't care how he feels about flat Earth, but to compare 9/11 to the Holocaust deniers is a slap in the face.
I don't think he did that in that post. He just said you couldn't talk about 9/11 conspiracy or flat Earth. They couldn't promote.
No, I promise you, he said not 9/11 conspiracy is the same as basically Holocaust deniers. That's exactly what he said, because my exact words are, my grandmother's Jewish and I have family in New York.
Okay, can you show me the post where he said that, or did he say it in the stream?
I can. No, he said it on. He said it in the post.
I think I hate to sort of say this, but maybe this is something you should talk about after.
Yeah, okay, you're right. Sorry. You're right. I said it. I said it in a bad context. I agree. It does frustrate me though. I don't mind you coming at me about being a flat earther. I'm used to it. I deal with trolls on a regular basis. That part doesn't matter. When you said an idiot, you don't know me enough to say I'm an idiot. No. My idea of flat Earth is what you meant.
Yeah, but I mean, just talking to you, I think a smart person, I think you're wrong on the flat Earth thing, and I think your justification for it is probably going to be poor. I'm not that much a science person, so I'm not very good at you know, dissembling such things. You know, but like I say, you've been civil and you've been nice enough, and you know, I can tell that you think. I think that you join dots very easily, which I think is a good way to be wrong about something.
I see where you're coming from, but I think my want to learn the extra keeps me from ever going to that alien. The alien pulled the ship into the building type. You know what I mean? Because I always that's what I've always based my too far on. You know, you always hear this guy. What, he's saying some good points. He's saying some good, and then all of a sudden, you know, I was probed and the alien took me for 6 months. At the end of the story, it always just kind of destroys the whole thing. I've always never wanted to get to that point.
Well, it was exactly like I said right at the start, where you know, you got people who say it was holograms. Because, you know, someone brought out the point that, you know, yeah, there were actual people who saw it, so they can't be fake planes dubbed in by the TV studios. That doesn't work if real people saw them. And so they have to shift it to, holograms. You know, they got to invent technology that doesn't exist.
That's
and then make a blanket assertion, but they're years ahead of us and we don't know this stuff. Well, hang on, if we don't know this stuff, how do they know this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand how people go there, because for me, if right now we're not doing it, but if we were having a flat Earth conversation, I would want to give you the stuff that I know I can almost prove, and my best stuff. I don't want to go on the fallacies of the stuff that I can't show you, and it kind of sounds kooky. The stuff that I feel, the reasons things that I observe are based on things that I observe. I don't know it all at all. I don't know enough to make you a flat earther, but I know enough that makes me go, okay, that doesn't make sense. And I know that they are willing to tell me one thing and it be other.
I've been at 42,000 feet. I've seen the curve.
That's not possible.
But I've seen it with my eyes.
But NASA tells everybody at 128,000, no matter what. If you're in a plane, those windows are not a flat pane, one seal window. It's a double pane or triple at some points.
That wasn't the plane I was flying in.
What were you in?
I'll show you.
Because unless it was a regular glass window, it had to have, and it wasn't pressurized. Because the reason those windows are like that, because of the pressure. You can't look at an airliner and see that curve and go, that's it, because those windows are first of all beveled. NASA tells you can't see it until you're almost out of almost into the ionosphere. It's crazy.
You can see a slight curve. I mean, it's not like you can see it curving like that.
Because one of the biggest problems I had, because when I came to Flat Earth, I was 100% globe. And I was there. That's usually what you'll hear. I was a Glober. I tried to debunk flat Earth, and damn it, they got me. That there was a lot of things that a flat earther who just wants you to believe them will tell you that doesn't make sense at all.
But
see, that's a beveled window. That's not what when you look through that window and you see the clouds in the background, you can obviously see that the window has its angles in it. It's not a straight pane window.
Yes,
that's going to show you curve.
Looking out the side.
Yeah, but the whole thing is going to do that. They did the Mythbusters one where they did the whole curve thing. They even said, "Well, we know the window is not, it's not a regular pane window, so it's going to show you something, but we believe me that it's there." That's the whole problem we have. Let me see a regular film. Let me see a real picture of Earth, please. I mean, that's the problem. Why can't we've even gone to the point where it goes, how come NASA doesn't just put an extra camera on a rocket and point it straight?
Okay,
I mean, that's not even.
Can I ask a question? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. This might be years, decades, that's gonna happen. But when space travel becomes, commercially available.
And I know what you're gonna say, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I will become a Glober again. I will 100% believe in a sphere. It's not a I refuse thing. It's literally my observations. I'm a surveyor. I can literally do a survey over 100 miles, and it's not going to curve. If you look at a ridge that's 50 miles wide at the ends, and you have an elevation of the lowest ends on that ridge, those ridge lines, if they're anywhere near within 100 feet of each other, they're not beveled. They're a level from each other at that elevation.
Okay, thank you for that. But to get back to 9/11, because Cliff said
my bad. You're right. You're 100%. You're right. You're right. And I tend to do that sometimes.
I think we'll end it now because we're going on for about 2.5 hours, I think, isn't it?
Yes. I personally think we just have different levels of what we believe to be viable false flag evidence. I honestly believe that anything besides the truth is.
But the problem is, how do you figure out what the truth is?
Well, I mean, we know the truth. We don't know the.
But
the real honesty of it is what they don't.
What I mean is, you can't know what someone knows. You can give an opinion based upon evidence that is around. But you can't say that in the mind of George Bush that he knows there were no weapons and he went in anyway. And this was deliberately done to achieve a goal which, actually didn't happen in the first place, which is they didn't get the oil. America didn't get the oil.
But see, that's the thing. We know there was no weapons of mass destruction, and he said there was. But here's the thing. I don't think
the problem is,
he was told to say it.
But the question is, did he think there were based upon the evidence that had come out of these dissidents?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
No, and that's the problem. Is you effectively can't assert that someone knows something. It's an example would be the God belief thing. I'm an atheist. I've always been an atheist. When I was 8-year-old, I read the Bible and I went, that doesn't resemble reality. Until then, I didn't pay any attention to it. And then I was like, this is fiction. It goes on mentally goes in the fiction shelf.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
But to begin with.
When I get people who try reading Romans 1 and saying, God exists, you just
God, that one.
No, see, for me,
it's like bullshit. I don't care what someone says about what the Bible says. That the Bible is wrong. It's as simple as that. I know what I know.
It's the phone book game.
So the problem is that yes, we can have bits of evidence about this, that, and the other, but how do you know what a politician knows? You can make a judgment, but you can't say for sure. You have
to be a mind reader.
You have to be a mind reader.
But
now I must say, I perfectly agree that you know, they took advantage of the situation and said, you know what, we're going to be having a war. Let me just make sure I buy some shares in that company. Because not only could I get shares in it at a reasonable price, but I can quite possibly, because I've got this ability to nudge the president in one direction or another, make sure that this company gets the contract.
It was just a series of coincidences.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a series of coincidences. I 100% see what you're saying. At very least, you have to say that I'm on the building blocks to. I mean, nothing I'm saying is not true, and I can see where a lot of people come out and try to do this with falsified evidence or falsified statements. And I think that's why it's so justified to me, because I strive to not do that. Where, you know, like what I said in the beginning, I'm not going to the buildings because there's not enough. I don't know enough about those buildings, and it would be me making bits and pieces to.
Oh, you broke up there.
Yeah.
I was just saying that I didn't use the buildings because I would have to falsify something in it to work with mine. But I base my belief on it, and maybe because I do that, or I don't use anything that I can't really use, like concrete wise, that my level of what a false flag is so much lower than yours because of that. Where a normal false flag is wrapped around these extravagant reasons and ideas of what's happening.
The biggest problem I have with such things is, and I mentioned it in brief earlier, which is, you know, we know, because people use their mouths and talk about things quietly or otherwise, that, you know, Kennedy had affairs with other women. And we know that, you know, Bill Clinton couldn't keep his, you know, pants on, you know, when it came to Lewinsky. And, you know, we know that, you know, the Watergate thing and so on. You know, we have these bits of information because officials are really bad at keeping their mouth shut. You know, they just mention something, you know, over dinner, or maybe while they were drinking a bit too much to someone, and next thing you know, the press finds out about it. You know, and then they explore a bit further and they find more and more and more evidence. You know, and this is what's going on with this Trump stuff right now. You know, it's the same kind of same.
Would you then say you may have a lot more idea of why you feel the way, but the issue I had more than justifying my false flag is how many of those people in that simple little poll said they believed it and didn't know why they did. That's what I'm worried about, because like you have to be worried about those people that go to hologram. To me, I feel like I have to worry about those people that just believe it because the government said so.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous thing to do as well. You know, and I think one of the dangers is that, because, you know, I think in modern times, especially that now that we got 24-hour news going on, that
there's too much information for people to look through. You know, it overwhelms them.
Well, it's more that, you know, especially in America, where, as I mentioned before, you've effectively got, you know, the Republican Party propaganda channel and the Democrat Party Republican.
Yeah.
You know, that they've got they've got a spin that they're trying to achieve, you know, and that's it. And so, you know, and, you know, you listen to, you know, Fox News the other day, you know, what's his name turns up and they're talking about burgers.
Yeah.
You know,
well, as an American, the slap in the face is Donald fucking Trump is our president. And then you go, and then the worst part of it is you go, but at least it's not Hillary.
Right.
That's the problem.
You know, I've said this quite a while now. You need a third party.
That's the worst part.
No.
We
absolutely not. You need a third party because, you know, in the last election, you've got a large percentage of the population that think Trump is an idiot and Hillary is dangerous. So you need someone in the middle. If there was a third party, which Bernie was on, let's use him as an example because he was a close runner-up. You know, would Bernie be in president now?
And here's the reason for conspiracy theorists. Honestly, between the media and our government, it's not up to us. And it sounds stupid to say, but it's true.
I disagree, but I think it would take an awful lot of time because we had similar kind of things going on. We only had a couple of parties, and then other ones sprung up. And so what it requires is people to say, we're going to have to start a new political party. And, you know, and they just need followers. And the thing is, in today, and in the same way as I said earlier, all it takes is a few people with similar mindset to create a community. You can do the same thing on a political level. You know, and whether they're Bernie or Busters, or whether they're Hillary fans, or whether they're Trump fans, or whatever, you know. But the problem you've got right now is that the party politics stuff, where, you know, I've got to stick with, you know, I recognize that Trump is an idiot, but he's the Republican leader, so therefore I have to vote for him. I have to vote what he wants to do, even though I recognize that he's an idiot, and he really doesn't belong here because, you know, this is a guy from the TV and he has no experience in politics. And
I think if he at best can be in government as, you know, like a business, a thought, like, see, but even then, a lot of people don't realize he's really more just a name.
Yeah,
he knows business. He's been doing business for a very long time, so I can't say he doesn't know business, but he definitely is no president.
I really don't think he knows business that well. I think other people
got to know something.
Well, he knows something, but
but yeah, he's been out of business for at least 20, 30 years. That's a gimme.
One thing I know for sure, he's not a millionaire. He's not a billionaire.
Oh, I'm sure he's bankrupt, or not bankrupt. I'm sure he's been bankrupt within the last 5 years.
Well,
no, hold on. He had four bankruptcies that he bounced back. Last I heard, he was like worth 10 billion.
Well, here's the thing, though. The thing
his name
is that it's not necessarily him that's bankrupt; it's his
brand
business that's bankrupt.
His brand, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, not even the brand, because he can sell the brand. You know, that's the point. But what I mean is that the reason why I say he's not a billionaire, and we're getting way off topic. I think we're going to end it in a moment.
Well, yeah.
The reason why I think he's not a billionaire is because if you actually look at all the stuff that's gone on around him, it looks like he's leveraged up to the eyeballs. And it's not the amount of money he has. Because at the end of the day, you know, think about it this way. Is a doctor that's earning $1 million a year, is he wealthy?
No.
One would say.
No.
Most people would say, "Oh yeah." He's
well, most, yeah. You can.
What happens if he's in a car accident? He can't work anymore.
Well, yeah, I understand.
He's worth now. Effectively, that guy's job is related to how much income he has. If he hasn't got a job, he hasn't got the income. So being rich is based upon how much money you've got, even if you're not working. Okay.
But who's to say he doesn't save half of that money, half of that million?
But what I'm trying to say is that I think if anything, he's a millionaire, maybe even tens or hundreds of millionaires, you know, millions. But billion, no, because most of it is going to be leveraged. He doesn't own that building. He rents. Effectively, he's got a huge mortgage on it.
I don't think he has that much money, and you can tell that because he does instill work ethics to his kids. His kids, you can tell, want to work. And when you have like stupid rich money, you tend not to see that too often.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of people who were born into rich families but wind up being, you know, lazy, you know, playboys, whatever. You know what I mean?
You know, yeah, it goes everywhere. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's regardless. We agree on at least that part. He should know.
And on that agreement, I think we're going to finish for tonight.
Yes, Cliffhanger. I honestly appreciate it. You're actually a very, very nice dude, and I would love to have another discussion about something else. You know, because you're not a if you don't think my way, it's not okay type person, and I think I can learn a lot from you, and I honestly do like to learn.
I'm a vast suppository of information,
and I would like.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I've never seen your cast, but honestly, and just that the messages from earlier, yesterday and today, I can tell you're respected by your peers that are in this community, and it's got to be for a reason. So,
I've been. I once had one of my friends say that I'm like Chris Mouty, which is quite a compliment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know, the way I operate is if someone's nice with me, I'm nice with them. If someone's an arsehole with me, I can be just the same.
Oh yeah.
I effectively mirror someone's personality.
Yes.
You know, but I mean, what I tend to do, I tend to be a little bit more of a wordsmith. So rather than just calling someone a fucking arsehole, I will sort of word it in a way so that, you know, I'm being condescending without actually calling them names.
And I notice that a lot of time, but at the same time, it's like, why? I don't want to go back and forth. That's the sucky part. You know what I mean? It's like once a debate gets to once you go back forth twice, then whatever you guys were doing is done. Yeah. Period. I mean, you both in your brains have already decided where it's at, and I don't like getting that part. I like the knowledge of people. It entertains me, and I like learning. So, again, I do appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for joining as well.
Well, I mean, you know, he and I talked about this like months ago. Remember, like, you know, you I think you spent like an hour and a half explaining as much as you can, and I'm like, I appreciate that too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all finished now, so we're going to go, and we're going to have a little chat here, you know. So thank you for joining us. Hope if you watched it, you enjoyed it. Maybe have another 9/11 hangout and find someone that believes, you know, still be, can't melt steel buildings with fire, things like that. So you know, people who think a little bit more radically on the you know, it's all a big cover-up and controlled demolition and fake
it is
stuff like that.
It is entertaining, definitely entertaining to hear it.
You know, and I've heard so many arguments, but this was enjoyable. I really did enjoy it, and thank you very much for both the people on in the discussion, and I hope people on the outside enjoyed it as well. So thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.